Dong-hee was the best b-boy dancer in the country, until a stage accident took his leg and destroyed everything he had built. Now he is just a quiet high school student hiding his prosthetic leg, trying to go unnoticed. But the moment he sees a girl named Genie performing incredible moves on an iron bar at the park, something inside him wakes up. He trains obsessively, pushing his body to its absolute limit every single day. 3 weeks later, the boy who could not do one pull-up achieves a move that takes most athletes years to learn. However, before any of this, when Dong-hee first watched a TV show about b-boy dancing, he instantly became deeply interested and felt a strong connection to it. From that moment on, he started practicing every single day without stopping, and over time, dancing slowly turned into the most important part of his life. As he kept improving and gaining experience, he began competing as a b-boyer and won many battles, which helped him gain recognition across the country. At his peak, he was shining brightly and stood out more than anyone else around him, almost like he was on top of the world. However, in the present time, Dong-hee is no longer that same person and now lives as an ordinary high school student who cannot dance anymore due to a serious injury in his leg. The injury happened during a match when the stage equipment collapsed and fell onto him, damaging his leg so badly that it eventually had to be amputated. Because of this, his life changed completely. One day, when Dong-hee returns to school, he carefully takes off his shoes while making sure that no one notices his prosthetic leg, as he does not want others to see it. Later in class, Dong-hee accidentally bumps into 2 boys who begin talking about how he used to be a dancer back in middle school and mention the fact that he lost his leg. As Dong-hee listens without them realizing, he overhears them speaking negatively about him and insulting him by calling him a crippled clown, which deeply hurts him. While heading back home, Dong-hee could not stop thinking about the harsh words those boys used while talking about him, and it kept repeating in his mind, making him feel even more angry and frustrated than before. He remembered how, in the past, he had faced all kinds of opponents and had always managed to defeat them with confidence, but now he felt helpless because he could no longer do that since his leg was damaged and no longer the same. As he continued walking, he suddenly noticed the same boys bothering a young girl who had only asked one of them if he worked out. The boy replied in a rude way, telling her that if she gave him some money, he would allow her to look at his body, but the girl responded honestly by saying that she did not have any money and also did not want to see his unimpressive body. After hearing her response, the boy became very angry, and just as he was about to hurt her, Dong-hee quickly stepped in and threw a rock that hit the boy on his head. Right after that, Dong-hee asked the girl if she was okay, showing concern for her safety, but at that moment, the bully turned toward him and tried to attack him. Dong-hee easily avoided the attack, proving that his reflexes were still sharp even after everything that had happened, and the angry boy then directly challenged him by asking if he wanted to fight. Instead of backing down, Dong-hee calmly explained that in b-boying there is a move known as the thread, which is a technique where a dancer skillfully passes his arms and legs through different positions in a smooth and controlled way. Right after saying this, Dong-hee used that same powerful and precise move in a real fight, delivering a strong kick that landed on the bully's head and knocked him out instantly. After dealing with the situation, Dong-hee turned to the girl and told her that she should go home safely now, but instead of leaving immediately, the girl asked him if he was interested in doing full-body workouts with her. Rather than giving her a proper answer, Dong-hee simply turned around and said that he was not interested, trying to brush off the situation and walk away. However, later that night, Dong-hee could not stop thinking about the girl and the way she mentioned full-body workouts, and these thoughts kept running through his mind so much that he barely got any sleep at all. Still thinking about everything, Dong-hee decided that he would go to the park early in the morning, but without realizing it, he had already fallen asleep and ended up sleeping for a full 8 hours. When he wakes up, he freaks out thinking that his mom is going to kill him. He then sees the same girl from yesterday doing workout in the park, and what surprises him more is that she is swinging around the bar with such amazing skills that even surprises Dong-hee. When she finishes her workout, Dong-hee approaches her saying he wants to try it too. That night, Dong-hee's mother calls him over so he can come and eat some food, but he does not respond at all, which makes her feel very angry. Thinking that he is probably just sitting in his room and wasting time watching videos on his computer like usual, she walks over to check on him. When she reaches his room, she notices a note placed on his computer screen, and it clearly says that he will be selling the computer, so she should not touch it and should not open the door under any condition. In reality, Dong-hee is actually on the other side of the room, seriously focused on doing push-ups as part of his training. Earlier that day, the girl felt extremely excited and happy after realizing that Dong-hee wanted to join her street workout club. She kept thanking him repeatedly with a bright smile and then introduced herself properly by telling him that her name is Genie. After hearing that, Dong-hee responded in a serious way by saying that he had decided to accept her as his master, and he explained that since he was going to learn such an amazing skill from her, he believed it would be disrespectful to simply call his teacher by her name. Genie found Dong-hee's behavior a bit strange, but she still decided to help him by starting with some basic explanations about street workout so he could understand the fundamentals. However, Dong-hee quickly interrupted her and asked about the specific movement she had shown earlier, and then he questioned when he would finally be able to perform that same move by himself. Genie explains to him that the move he asked about is actually very difficult to perform properly and that he will need to practice a lot before he can even get close to doing it. She then goes on to tell him that the most basic and important exercises to start with are push-ups and pull-ups, and after that, they will slowly choose a direction for his training based on how well he is able to perform and improve over time. After hearing that, Dong-hee immediately tries to do both of those exercises, but he ends up failing badly and struggles a lot with them. Feeling embarrassed, Dong-hee says that he does not have any talent at all, but Genie quickly responds by telling him that he should not feel that way because it is completely normal to struggle with movements that he has never tried before. As she observes his reaction, Genie realizes that he is being too impatient and rushing things, so she decides that she needs to show him a bit of reality to help him understand better. She then tells him that she will demonstrate some moves, and that he should focus and watch her very carefully. After saying that, Genie walks up to the bar, firmly grabs onto it, and performs a muscle-up in a powerful way, which leaves Dong-hee amazed as he feels that there is something incredibly strong about that move. Genie then explains that it is a very hard move to master and reassures him that it is completely fine if he cannot do it right now. She adds that even being able to do a proper pull-up is the minimum requirement, and if he has not achieved that yet, then aiming for higher-level movements will only become more unrealistic and difficult as the motion becomes more advanced. Back in present, a courier shows up at Dong-hee's house with bunch of boxes and his mom gets surprised to see that. It turns out, Dong-hee sold his PC and bought bunch of exercising equipment to help him train. 1 week later, Genie at school thinks that she needs one or more people to be able to create a club and find an advisor to help them. She also thinks about Dong-hee who she saw 1 week ago and wonders what he is up to. Just then, Dong-hee shows up at her class and calls her master in front of everyone, so she gets embarrassed and pushes him out of the class. She tells him not to call her master again, but Dong-hee says that he has succeeded and he can do the muscle-up now. Later that day, Dong-hee shows her that he can do muscle-up as well, and she gets shocked wondering how he learned to do that move in just 1 week. Dong-hee then ends up falling on the ground, and the girl happens to see his prosthetic leg. Genie then asks him if he originally has ever done any other kind of exercise, and Dong-hee says that he did dancing back in the days. He explains that at that time, he worked out for some time to build up his stamina, but thanks to that it was less difficult later time than doing it the first time. He also mentions that when he looked at her moves it looked like at the end of the recoil before lifting herself up, it looked like she was pulling her feet hard and when she was nearing up, the power raised was with her legs. He also says that if he hadn't seen that part, he wouldn't have made it but he was lucky. However, Genie thinks that it wasn't luck because he figured out the trick to the muscle-up by just seeing it once and he has the sense for it. Genie tells him that he is actually doing great, even though at first she thought he was just a strange and unusual person, but now she can clearly see that he has been working very hard, which makes him seem truly impressive in her eyes. She further explains that she wants to gather more people as quickly as possible so they can properly form a club, and that way they will all be able to enjoy working out together and have fun as a group. Dong-hee then asks her what she plans to do after successfully forming the club, and she simply answers that her main goal is just to have a happy and enjoyable school life without overthinking things too much. Later, while they are sitting together at a coffee shop, Genie shares more about her thoughts and tells Dong-hee that ever since she first entered high school, it had always been her dream to create and lead a club of her own. She honestly admits that there is still nothing clearly defined about the club yet, and she has not planned everything in detail, but she believes that if they are able to gather more members, they could slowly build something meaningful and eventually organize events or even hold a small contest where everyone can participate and enjoy themselves together. After talking about her goals, Genie becomes curious and asks Dong-hee why he decided to take up this sport in the first place, and in response, he begins to share the story about his leg. He explains that during a dance event, he was involved in an accident that led to his leg being amputated, and that before that moment, dancing was the only thing he had ever truly known since he was very young. He then adds that after the accident, he was forced to face reality and realized that he did not really know how to do anything else in life, and because of that sudden change, all of his friends slowly drifted away and left him alone. However, he explains that when he saw her performing those moves in the park, he felt a strange spark inside him, almost like a sudden shock, and it made him strongly want to try this for himself. He also mentions that watching those powerful and impressive movements brought back the same kind of passion and excitement he used to feel when he was just a kid. After sharing this, the two of them begin talking about how they should address each other and agree that they should stop being so formal and act more comfortably around one another. At that moment, a few girls from their school happen to notice them sitting together and recognize Genie from a distance. Later that day, when Donghee returns home, he immediately removes his prosthetic leg and thinks about how tiring and frustrating it is to deal with it every single day. The following day at school, everyone suddenly becomes excited and starts talking loudly about a new girl who has blonde hair and stands out from the rest. To Donghee's complete surprise, that same girl walks straight up to him without hesitation and suddenly slaps him across the face with great force, causing him to fall to the ground, while angrily saying that she will never forgive him. The girl angrily tells him that she will never forgive him for leaving them behind like that, showing how deeply upset she still is about the past. The people standing around them begin to look at the scene with curiosity, wondering why a girl like her would suddenly hit Donghee, and from their point of view, it seems like she is holding a strong grudge against him for something serious. Donghee, however, feels confused and does not understand what she is talking about, so she explains that she is referring to the time when he was active in his b-boying days. At the same time, somewhere else, a student informs a girl with green hair that there was a girl who just hit a boy in their class, spreading the news quickly. She also adds rumors from the past, saying that Donghee once fought against 17 people at once after getting into a conflict while he was dancing alone, and that later on, he even broke his own leg on purpose and continued fighting despite that, which makes the story sound even more shocking. Soon after, the blonde-haired girl directly tells Donghee that he should come to the back of the school during break time so they can talk properly. After some time passes and the break begins, Donghee goes to the place she mentioned, and there, the blonde-haired girl finally reveals her identity by introducing herself as Soya, who is known as the youngest member, or Magne, of their team. She asks him how he could not remember as they even had a group photo and he was there. Donghee says that she has changed so much that he didn't even recognize her, and Soya says that she is an idol trainee and she have to work hard to take care of herself to become a pro. Donghee asks her if she left the team, but Soya says that the team itself is no more. After hearing that, Donghee becomes very surprised and confused, but Soya calmly tells him that he was actually the one who created the team in the past, so it is only natural for things to have turned out this way. She also explains that all of the members were originally people he had brought together himself, and that they had all become friends after meeting him and following his lead. After saying what she needed to say, Soya leaves the area, and shortly after that, Genie arrives and notices Donghee standing there alone, so she asks him what he is thinking about. Trying to clear his mind, Donghee goes back to focusing on his muscle-up training, and even though he finds it extremely difficult and challenging, he still feels that the movement is very impressive and worth learning. Sometime later, Soya returns again and properly introduces herself to Genie so they can get to know each other. After that, Soya takes out her phone and shows them a video of her performing advanced workout skills, and as they watch the clip, both Donghee and Genie feel shocked and amazed by how skilled and powerful her movements look. After that, Genie decides to show her skills in real life, demonstrating her moves properly in front of Soya and Donghee. Donghee cannot take his eyes off her performance, watching closely and thinking that he wants to become someone even stronger than Genie one day. After seeing everything, he even turns to Soya and asks her if Genie is really that good, and Soya becomes so shocked by what she just saw that she is left speechless, unable to even close her mouth for a moment. Soya starts analyzing Genie's movements in her mind and wonders about the control and connection she showed in her last swing, as well as how she managed to perform all the earlier moves so smoothly. She also thinks that compared to overseas athletes, there are not many people like this in Korea, especially among women, but Genie has managed to perfect movements that are usually difficult even for experienced male athletes. Because of this, Soya becomes more curious and starts asking Genie many questions in order to understand her better, feeling that she might be someone with hidden talent. Before leaving, Soya invites both of them and asks if they are free during the weekend, saying that she wants to show them what real street workout training and practice actually look like. A few days later, Genie and Donghee arrive at the location where Soya asked them to come, and both of them are shocked when they see a large group of athletic people performing different kinds of intense exercises all around them. Soya explains to them that this place is known as Street Workout, where all the club members gather together, and she also tells them that this park is called Kilbong Park. It is actually the first Kilbong Park in Korea, located in Gangdong-gu, Seoul, and it is well known as a meeting place where many bare-body sports clubs hold practices, gatherings, and even competitions. As Dong-hee looks around in surprise, he notices people performing extremely difficult movements, including one-arm pull-ups that require a huge amount of strength and control. He says that he had no idea there were so many people seriously dedicated to exercising, and that there are even others who train in a similar way to Genie. In response, Soya explains that these types of movements are called dynamic movements. She further teaches them that street workout techniques are mainly divided into two categories, dynamic motion and static motion. Soya then explains that athletes usually combine both of these styles to create their own unique form, which they use in competitions, and this combined performance is called freestyle. Over time, as competitions became more popular and widespread, bare body workouts gradually evolved into a recognized sport rather than just casual training. She further explains that in other countries, there are already many professional teams and even sponsors supporting the sport, and it has become a major form of entertainment that is widely recognized and even put in the spotlight. She also mentions that the reason she learned all of this was by watching overseas videos, and at that time she had no idea that there were so many people in Korea who were also training and exercising in this way. Just then, a guy with a strange blonde hairstyle approaches Genie and asks if she has come there to work out. He then comments that the iron bar might be too difficult for someone as slim as her and casually asks if she would like some help. However, Genie immediately responds confidently that she can handle it on her own and decides to prove it by showing her own skills in front of him. On the other side, Dong-hee comes across an impressive man who is already famous on the internet, known as Mangjin. He is performing in front of a crowd, showing off his strength by doing one-arm push-ups, and on top of that, he is also mixing in other difficult tricks while maintaining perfect control. After Mangjin finishes his performance, Dong-hee walks up to him and tells him that he wants to learn from him as well and asks him to teach him. Mangjin looks confused at Dong-hee's sudden request, but Dong-hee strongly insists that he should teach him because he is completely impressed by his abilities. Mangjin immediately responds that he absolutely hates teaching others and that he has no reason or interest in teaching him anything at all. Hearing this, Dong-hee feels a bit discouraged, and the guy standing nearby tells him not to interrupt Mangjin while he is in the middle of his workout. Unexpectedly, Mangjin then asks Dong-hee why he even wants to learn exercise in the first place, and Dong-hee honestly replies that it is because he finds it cool and interesting. Mangjin coldly responds that there is nothing he can teach someone with that kind of simple mindset, and he explains that body workout is something serious that does not allow even a single mistake, especially when competing against multiple strong opponents in sports. Dong-hee then looks at Mangjin and asks him directly if he actually enjoys doing workouts like that. Hearing this question makes Mangjin even more annoyed and furious, but Dong-hee calmly adds that while competition and sports can be exciting and fun, the act of exercising itself does not feel fun to him at all. Mangjin then challenges Dong-hee, and asks him if he really thinks he can beat him because he doesn't have history of losing to a type like him. Just then, Soya shows up and everyone informs her that Dong-hee and Mangjin are having a push-up battle. It turns out, it is a method in which multiple push-up application movements are changed every round, and the number is determined at random, and if the knee or elbow touches the ground first, the player loses. Just then, a luxury car stops nearby, and a blonde-haired man wearing sunglasses steps out. He casually tells the girl with him that they should go around and grab something to eat, like rice, as if everything around him is normal and relaxed. On the other side, Mangjin takes off his shirt, and instantly everyone's attention locks onto his body because of how well-built and impressive it looks. Dong-hee also notices it and thinks that Mangjin's physique is really amazing, while the entire atmosphere around the place feels strange and intense due to all these strong competitors. Dong-hee then also takes off his shirt, but because of his skinny build and lack of visible muscles, no one really pays attention to him. Before the match officially begins, the rules are explained clearly. This push-up battle is a system where the difficulty increases with each round, and each round lasts 30 minutes. If a participant gives up or fails to complete the required movements, they are eliminated and lose the match. Once the explanation is finished, the battle starts with both competitors doing push-ups. As Dong-hee continues, he feels a gradual increase in full-body fatigue building up inside him, as if his muscles are slowly getting heavier and more exhausted with every repetition. Both of them then succeeded to by 30 push-ups in round 1. Now, the second round starts off with narrow push-up, and the round begins with Dong-hee having a hard time. Just then, the same blonde glasses guy and his girl shows up at the park thinking that there are many talented athletes here because it's easy to watch and practice many movements from internet. He also explains that although Korea has not yet reached the same level as Europe and America in sports development, more and more talented athletes are starting to appear and gain attention over time. While he is carefully observing the surrounding area, Dong-hee suddenly notices that a serious competition or battle is happening nearby, so he decides to walk over to see what is going on. As he gets closer to the scene, Dong-hee accidentally overhears people talking about the match, and they say that the competitor on the left side might actually die from extreme exhaustion, which shows just how intense and dangerous the push-up battle is for normal people and how it is much harder than it first appears. After that, the referee looks toward Dong-hee and asks him whether he still wants to continue into the third round of the competition, and in response Dong-hee confidently tells him to start the next round immediately without hesitation. The third round then begins with archer push-ups, which are described as a highly difficult variation of push-ups that require not only great upper body strength but also strong balance and control, making them extremely challenging to perform. While performing, Dong-hee realizes that going down is manageable, but when he tries to push himself back up, his back starts shaking heavily due to the strain. After 5 minutes of intense struggle, the third round finally ends, and both competitors manage to succeed, even though Dong-hee is left in a miserable and exhausted condition. The people nearby then talks about how Dong-hee is at his limit, and the difference between both athletes in stamina is too great. Myung-ju then asks Dong-hee if he knows that he can't win this match and says that there are some guys who are just different from learning, and he can watch videos of it. The round 4 starts off with one arm push-up which Myung-hee is a pro at, but as for Dong-hee, he ends up on the floor just in one try. Seeing that, everyone gets worried and thinks that he must have passed out. The guy with the sunglasses tells his girl that he actually likes Dong-hee now. After that, everyone's attention goes to Genie, who is performing some moves on the iron rod, surprising everyone. While performing, she happens to jump so high in the air that it's nearly impossible to do by any average person. When she lands safely on ground, everyone starts cheering for her and tells her some encouraging things like she did an awesome job and she will really cook. They also talk about how it's the first time they have ever seen someone so good at freestyle. Seeing that, Soya thinks that this was expected as she has a great reaction. Later that evening, Dong-hee says that he is tired and he is not going to overthink about anything. Soya tells Dong-hee that he is still in the battle, and he tells her that he is not going to lose next time. He then tells Genie that she was really awesome today and asks how is she feeling right now. Genie replies that she was welcomed by so many people and it's been good when she has been exercising alone so far, but in front of many people was weird for her. Dong-hee tells Soya that they should head back there once more, expressing that he personally wants another shot at beating that guy as well, but Soya quickly points out that the meetings only take place once a month. Dong-hee then turns to Soya and suggests that the two of them should go there together, but she pushes back by pointing out that she is not even a member of their club in the first place. Dong-hee, however, counters her hesitation by insisting that they should make it an official club activity together, and he honestly tells her that without her involvement and knowledge, the rest of them would have had absolutely no idea what was going on and would have just been mindlessly exercising without any real direction or purpose. After some convincing, Soya finally agrees to join their club, and everyone around them reacts with genuine excitement and happiness at the news of her decision. Shifting back 6 years into the past, a much younger Dong-hee is seen having a casual conversation with his friends about the idea of starting a club together, when suddenly all of them notice Soya standing nearby for the very first time. Dong-hee turns to his friend with curiosity and asks whether he has any idea who she is, and his friend fills him in by explaining that she is something like a 4th grader at their school, and that her family is known for being extremely wealthy. They also say that a limousine comes to school, and he heard she's a complete princess at home, and that's why the kids in their class are bullied these days because they are unlucky. Dong-hee then approaches Soya for the first time and asks if she would like to join their b-boy team. Dong-hee explains to her that b-boy means dancing, and Soya straight away says that she is not interested. However, Dong-hee feels that she is lying because she has been starting at them ever since they got here and it shows that she wants to do it. He also tells her that they can dance together, and Soya agrees to join their club. Back in the present, Dong-hee walks Genie all the way back to her home, and on his way back alone, his mind continues to drift and linger on thoughts of Mangjin, unable to shake them off entirely. Just at that moment, the same mysterious guy wearing sunglasses from before suddenly appears in front of him and boldly tells Dong-hee that if he is willing to work alongside him, he will have the power to defeat absolutely anyone in the entire world that he wishes. Dong-hee firmly tells the guy to back off and leave him alone, but rather than walking away, the guy calmly pulls out his business card and holds it out toward him. Dong-hee's expression immediately shifts to one of pure shock when he looks at the card and realizes that the man is affiliated with EEK, which is an incredibly well-known and highly respected fashion brand recognized by practically everyone. The guy then explains to Dong-hee that beyond just the world of fashion, he He is also currently pouring a significant amount of money and resources into investing in the rapidly growing sport of street workout, which has been steadily spreading and gaining massive popularity across the world. The guy then casually brings up the topic of Donghee's leg, and without any hesitation he lifts his pant leg and reveals to Donghee that it is actually a prosthetic leg, going on to explain that he had lost his original leg in a terrible accident and had made the decision to have it cut off himself. That night, Genie gets back home and his sister questions her why she is late today as it's almost dinner time. Genie wonders why she is questioning her, and she says it's all because she is late. Genie then notices her mom standing there who is also mad at Genie for being late. Genie then asks her mother if she is joining them for dinner as it's been a long time since she came home. Genie's mom replies that she just came to pick up her clothes so she doesn't have time. On the other hand, the glasses guy tells Donghee that he also saw the battle in Kilbong Park, and after seeing that he wants to say that he likes his guts. He also says that he likes Donghee's ability to perform an exercise on one leg, which is pretty good for someone just starting out, and it sounds like he is also really enjoying this workout. He continues saying that there are good guys everywhere, but that businessman takes care because they want to make money. So, he is doing something different as he wants to create a culture that purely enjoys the workout like in the past. The guy then asks Donghee to join him. The following day, Donghee informs Soya that he had turned down the mysterious man's offer, which immediately catches her completely off guard and leaves her visibly shocked. Soya explains to Donghee that the man is actually from a well-known company called Famous Maker, which happens to be the most popular and recognized online editorial shop in existence. She goes on to describe how the company had originally started out as a tiny little store in LA but eventually grew into something massive after it began carrying and selling all of the most well-known and sought-after brands together under one roof. She further explains that Famous Maker has become the industry's biggest and most impressive dark horse, having grown at an incredibly rapid pace thanks to a very straightforward and consumer-friendly marketing strategy that includes perks like free shipping and a solid guarantee that every single product sold is completely genuine and authentic. She also reveals to Donghee that it was none other than Joseph himself who had built and created such a remarkably successful company from the ground up. Shifting back to the previous evening, the mysterious man urgently and desperately pleads with Donghee, pressing him on whether he truly has no desire or interest in playing a role in building an entirely new and groundbreaking kind of culture across the Korean land. Donghee, however, stands his ground and firmly explains that the reason he simply cannot join the man is because he already has a master who he serves with complete and unwavering loyalty and devotion, and he makes it absolutely clear that he has no intention whatsoever of ever betraying her for any reason. The man then grows curious and asks Donghee about the identity of this master he speaks of so highly, and Donghee responds by explaining that she is a first-year junior student at their school, and that she will always and forever remain his one true master no matter what happens. Donghee also makes it known that his personal goal is to grow powerful and capable through his very own hard work and effort, rather than relying on anyone else to give him that strength. Back in present, Genie informs the rest of the team that she has successfully obtained the official club application form, and she also mentions that a minimum of 3 members is required in order for the club to be approved. Donghee then suggests to the group that they can take part in various competitions as a solid and effective way to boost their overall club activity and standing. Shortly after, when Donghee walks over and slides open the classroom window, he is surprised to spot a helicopter hovering in the distant sky. Within moments, news spreads quickly and the entire school population rushes downstairs and pours out onto the school grounds to get a better look at what is happening. The representative from the previous night, the very same man who had approached Donghee with his proposal, leaps out from the helicopter high above, and as he comes plummeting down toward the ground at great speed, he manages to grab onto a nearby iron pole, using it to spin his entire body around with incredible skill before landing on top of it with perfect control. The representative then tells Donghee that he is here because of his club and reveals that he is the teacher in charge. Donghee asks him if he is from their school and wonders how he is in charge, so turns out the representative spends some money on the school principal to get this position. That evening, the representative introduces himself as Joseph, who has become an advisor to their club, so they should take good care of him in the future. Donghee thinks that he is a liar, and Joseph replies that he is not lying when he saw he is a teacher because he does have a teaching certificate. Joseph asks the 3 of them to introduce themselves, starting with Soya, who aspires to become an idol. Next up, it's Genie, who Joseph thinks that has showed a considerable level of freestyle. Joseph tells her that she did a good job at that time, and he thinks that even at a young age, she proved herself to be talented. Joseph realizes that this is the master friend that Donghee was talk about. He then tells them that it's a club activity so he will be always there, and they are going to have fun. That night, Donghi's mother cooks some special ramen. Instead of focusing on that special meal that his mom cooked for him, he thinks about why Joseph came to his school. Unknowingly, Donghi says a curse word that made his mother cry, and she thinks that he is saying her food is that bad. The following day, Genie arrives at the club since it's the first day of their new club, and when Joseph arrives, he gets surprised to see that Genie is sitting there all alone. At that moment, Donghi shows up and says that he has something to tell him. He then takes him in private and asks Joseph why he came here and says that he thinks that he knows the reason. Donghi then asks him if he is putting him on the team that he is making. However, Joseph says that it seems like what he said that night showed looked like he was not serious. Joseph then tells Donghi that he is going to tell him about his old days and back when he was in America. He was sitting on the playground of an elementary school, and a kid called him from afar. He goes on to explain that one particular day, he happened to come across a young kid standing in front of an iron bar, and the kid looked over at him and casually asked him to watch and let him know whether his pull-up was successful or not. He tells Donghi that from that very day forward, he witnessed a scene that completely and permanently changed the entire course of his life, and that scene was the sight of that same kid effortlessly performing a pull-up using only a single arm. Shortly after that, the kid simply vanished and disappeared without a trace, and the man found himself staying behind and practicing on the bar over and over again until the sun had fully gone down beneath the horizon. Despite putting in attempt after attempt with everything he had, he failed every single time without coming anywhere close to succeeding, and the very next day his entire body was absolutely screaming and aching all over from the intense muscle pain that had built up overnight. He also shares that he pushed through and practiced all throughout that entire night as well, and from that point onward he made it a personal habit and commitment to practice every single day whenever he could find even a small window of free time. He further explains that 4 days into his intense training, one of his friends happened to walk up and curiously asked what he was doing, and upon hearing the explanation, his friend expressed that he wanted to give it a try himself. Before long, the area around Kilbong had become completely packed and crowded with groups of boys all gathered around. Joseph then proceeds to actually demonstrate his one-handed pull-up right in front of Donghi, who watches in amazement and enthusiastically remarks that he now finally has a senior figure around who is actually capable of teaching him how to perform one-handed pull-ups properly. The following day, Joseph makes his way back to school when a group of excited girls immediately surrounds him and eagerly asks whether they can take a picture with him as well. Joseph coolly responds by telling them that absolutely everyone wants a picture with him, so they are all going to have to be patient and wait their turn. Joseph then shifts his attention over to Donghi and explains to him that maintaining open and genuine communication with fans is actually a very important part of building and creating a lasting culture, because if someone is a player then they absolutely have to carry an entertainer's side to them as well in order to truly connect with people. A whole week has gone by since the club was officially created, and yet there has not been a single activity or event organized so far, and in the meantime Donghi is busy getting some much-needed help and guidance from Genie. Donghi asks Genie to keep her eyes on him as he attempts the cross-the-bar position, and Soya chimes in from the side saying that she is planning to record the whole thing and put together a proper video out of it. Donghi then steps up to the bar and smoothly pulls off a muscle-up first before launching himself up into the air and swiftly switching his entire body position around with impressive control. Joseph shows up just in time to witness it and immediately remarks that it is a truly tremendous rate of growth, adding that he genuinely cannot wrap his head around the fact that Donghi had not managed to do even a single pull-up until just 3 weeks prior. Soya says that it's because Donghi has a goal, and since olden days, it feels like Donghi only runs while looking forward. Joseph then walks up to Donghi and asks if he can also do static motion. Joseph then says that from what he has seen so far, they are all dynamic and he didn't do anything other than dynamic motion. Donghi says that static is too boring and they will not progress fast enough with that, and Joseph says that it's true that he needs to be very persistent but his goal is to be the best. Joseph also tells him that eating an unbalanced diet is not good for him and Korea's Mangjin became famous cause of doing static motion. Joseph also brings up the idea that the two of them should pay a visit to someone he personally knows in order to learn and pick up the fundamental basics from them properly. He then pulls out his phone and sends Donghi the exact address, instructing him to go there and look for a specific person going by the name of Sanjin. On his way back home, Donghi finds himself deep in thought, reflecting on how the whole situation feels almost like he is about to leave his entire ordinary world behind in order to dedicate himself fully to training, and somehow despite all the uncertainty, his heart feels surprisingly and unexpectedly full and warm about the whole prospect. Shortly after, Donghi finally arrives at the rather run-down and shabby-looking address that Joseph had sent him, and he reaches out and presses the doorbell to announce his arrival. At that very moment, a broken and rattling old cart suddenly begins rolling and picking up speed as it heads straight downhill in his direction, while an elderly old man frantically chases after it from behind in a desperate attempt to catch up and stop it before it goes any further. To Donghi's surprise, the same old man then turns and makes his way toward the exact same house address that Joseph had given him earlier. Donghi's mind immediately begins to race with questions, wondering to himself whether that elderly grandfather is perhaps the actual owner of the house, or whether that same grandfather could possibly be the legendary master of bare body workout that Joseph had been referring to all along. Just as his thoughts are swirling around, Mangjin suddenly appears out of nowhere, and the moment the two of them laid eyes on each other, both are left completely shocked. Afterward, the old man makes the decision to bring Donghi inside the house, and the moment they walk in, Mangjin's expression immediately darkens with fury upon seeing him standing there. Mangjin wastes no time and begins trying to mock Donghi, sarcastically suggesting that the only reason he is even showing up at their place is because he had lost to him in their previous encounter. The grandfather then warmly sets out some food for everyone to eat together, and it quickly becomes apparent that Mangjin is being rather picky and selective about what he is and is not willing to put on his plate. Donghi seizes the opportunity and taunts him by asking whether he is acting like some kind of little child, pointing out that he is not even willing to eat something as simple as beans. Upon hearing that pointed remark, Donghi immediately reaches over and begins eating the beans himself, staring Mangjin down and challenging him by asking whether he seriously believes that he is someone who cannot handle eating a few beans. After the dinner is finished, Mangjin heads off to take a shower, and upon stepping back into the room feeling refreshed, he is completely caught off guard to find Donghi sprawled out and comfortably laying across the sofa as if he owns the place. Donghi casually announces that he is planning to spend the night and sleep right there, which sends Mangjin straight to his grandfather to lodge a complaint about the situation. The old man calmly explains to him that Donghi happens to be a disciple of someone he is acquainted with, and that he had come specifically to pay him a visit. Mangjin then settles in beside his grandfather and begins gently massaging his shoulders, warmly asking him how his day had gone and whether everything was all right. He also takes the moment to remind his grandfather to stay cautious and alert, warning him that there have been a lot of troublesome bullies causing problems around the neighborhood lately, and specifically pointing out Donghi as someone he considers to be a particularly bad troublemaker. However, the grandfather says that he doesn't think so because today Donghi helped him pick up a cart that he missed on a downhill road. Otherwise, all the waste paper he picked up all day would have been scattered all over the place. The next morning, Donghi wakes up at 5 in the morning for the first time in his life. While climbing the mountain, the grandfather asks him if he is okay because his legs look uncomfortable. After they reach on top of it, Mangjin tells Donghi that they are going to do some exercises here and asks if he really don't came here to see grandfather exercise. Donghi carefully watches the grandfather doing pull-ups, thinking he might stop it after 20 tries, but the grandfather manages to do 200 pull-ups in a single go. Mangjin tells Donghi that his grandfather is the Guinness record holder for the longest person to perform pull-ups. He further explains that the record is a total of 602 times in 2 hours and 43 minutes, and it's been 20 years already and no one in the world has broken that. Donghi then walks over to the grandfather and asks him how he ever managed to reach the point where he was capable of doing all of the incredible things that he does. The grandfather calmly replies that if Donghi simply keeps at it consistently and never stops, then he will eventually get the hang of it all on his own over time. The grandfather also adds that the human body is completely and refreshingly honest in the way it responds, meaning that if someone truly wants something badly enough, all they really have to do is pour an enormous amount of dedicated practice and burning eagerness into it and the results will follow naturally. Later that same day, Donghi approaches Mangjin and asks him directly to teach him some exercises, specifically expressing that he is very eager to learn that particular static workout that he had witnessed Mangjin performing sometime before. Mangjin, however, shuts him down and tells him that he has absolutely nothing to teach him and that he should simply turn around, go back home, and not bother showing up at this place ever again. Donghi, completely unfazed by the cold rejection, fires back and tells Mangjin with complete seriousness and determination that he is going to show up here every single day without fail until Mangjin finally agrees to teach him, which visibly catches Mangjin completely off guard and leaves him genuinely surprised. Later that same evening, a group of aggressive thugs shows up and attempts to start trouble with and intimidate the grandfather right there at his place of work. At that very moment, Donghi suddenly shows up on the scene and immediately turns to the grandfather, asking him whether he is doing okay, which causes the lead thug to grow absolutely furious upon realizing that Donghi personally knows the old man. The thug aggressively gets in Donghi's face and demands to know whether he even has any idea what is going on here right now and asks him whether he has some kind of death wish. Without even a moment of hesitation, Donghi swiftly jabs 2 fingers straight into the thug's eyes and follows it up immediately with a sharp and powerful knee strike directly to his head, taking him completely by surprise. Donghi then turns to address the rest of the bullies and calmly tells them that there are exactly 2 things in this world that he absolutely cannot stand and despises more than anything else, and those are people who make disrespectful comments about his leg, and people who show absolutely no respect toward their elders. He then gives the remaining thugs a straightforward warning, telling them that they had better apologize quickly and without delay if they have any interest in walking away from this situation without getting seriously hurt. However, the bullies completely misread the situation and convince themselves that Donghi is simply mocking and toying with them, and so they stubbornly refuse to offer any kind of apology whatsoever. After thoroughly teaching the entire group of bullies a well-deserved and painful lesson they will not soon forget, Donghi carefully escorts the grandfather all the way back home and gently asks him whether those thugs had actually physically hurt him in any way. Once Donghi confirms that the grandfather is completely unharmed and doing fine, he shakes his head and remarks that there seem to be a whole lot of dangerous and unpleasant people lurking around this particular neighborhood. The grandfather responds thoughtfully and mentions that it has actually been quite a long while since he last saw troublesome kids going around stealing and causing problems in the neighborhood like this. The grandfather then asks Donghi if he is here to see Mangjin. Donghi tells him that he is here to ask him to teach some exercises. The grandfather then explains that Mangjin is a little blunt because as a child he had a tough life. He tells him that when his son and wife got divorced when he is still young, then after that his son died into an accident. So, up until now Mangjin is living with him. In a flashback, Mangjin's grandfather gives him a precious thing from his grandmother. One day, Mangjin's friends call him over to play, and he tells them that he can't right now because his grandfather is out for work, and he have to look after the house. The boys reassure the grandfather that it will not take very long at all since they are only planning to play right out in front of the house where everything is visible. After some back and forth, Donghi finally agrees to go along with it, but unfortunately during that same window of time, a thief manages to sneak in and break into the house completely undetected. That night, Mangjin witnesses something that shakes him deeply and stays with him, as he sees his grandfather break down and cry for the very first time in his life, and he feels an overwhelming sense of guilt and sorrow wash over him because he realizes that his grandfather's tears had come about entirely because of him and his actions. Shifting back to the present, Mangjin arrives back home and his grandfather casually mentions to him that Donghi had stopped by and come to visit earlier that day. The moment Mangjin hears this, his anger flares up immediately and he tells his grandfather that he should not be accepting or welcoming Donghi under any circumstances going forward. The grandfather, however, gently pushes back and tells him that if it had not been for that very same kid showing up when he did earlier that day, he would have found himself in some very serious and dangerous trouble. That same night, Donghi heads out entirely on his own to a nearby park where he throws himself into an intense solo training session, working through all kinds of different pull-up variations with fierce determination in order to build himself up and grow stronger. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, the group of thugs that had been beaten up by Donghi make their way back to their leader, who is absolutely seething with anger and embarrassment upon hearing that his crew had been taken down by some random unknown kid off the street. The leader then declares that he is going to handle the situation personally by going to find that kid himself and making sure he teaches him a very painful and unforgettable lesson. One morning, Donghi drags himself toward his grandfather's house barely able to keep his eyes open from exhaustion. As he walks, he turns over in his mind what he said to Mangjin the day before, and doubt starts creeping in. He begins to wonder whether Mangjin will actually go through with teaching him. Lost in that uncertainty, he almost does not notice the figure leaning against the wall right in front of him. It is Mangjin, standing there as if he has been waiting. Donghi asks in disbelief whether Mangjin has decided to train him after all. Mangjin is quiet for a moment, and then gives a simple and unexpected yes. He adds that it will be only one exercise and nothing more. When Donghi asks him to repeat himself, Mangjin says it again without changing a single word. He then tells him to follow and starts walking. Donghi stands completely frozen for a few seconds, unable to process what just happened. Meanwhile, back at school, the first classes of the day are wrapping up. In the first-year classroom, Soya's friends ask her to come with them to karaoke or a club after school. Her friend gives her a look and asks if she has changed, and whether she already has other plans lined up. When school lets out, Soya heads off on her own, thinking about Donghi, who has gone completely off the radar and is not answering anyone. As she walks, she notices a familiar figure training nearby. It turns out to be Genie, who has just finished her warm-up and is pulling her hair back into a ponytail. They greet each other, and Genie is clearly in a good mood. Soya asks if she trains every day, and when Genie confirms it, Soya asks if she has anything else going on. Genie mentions that she recently signed up for some extracurricular activities. Soya stares but before she can say anything, Joseph suddenly appears out of nowhere and immediately starts asking how their classes went. He tells the girls he wants to show them something and asks if they have a few minutes. Soya says she is in a hurry. Joseph tells her it will only take 5 minutes. Genie, meanwhile, is quietly wondering to herself what Dong-hee is up to right now. At a separate location, Mangjin asks Dong-hee what he has decided he wants to learn. Dong-hee admits he does not have a clear answer. He just saw Mangjin and felt an overwhelming urge to train with him. After thinking for a moment, he says that what he really wants to learn is the planche. Mangjin looks at him seriously and explains that the planche is an advanced calisthenics movement that demands enormous muscle mass, strength, and endurance, and it is simply not suitable for someone who has just started training. Dong-hee raises his voice and says firmly that he is not weak, and that this is exactly what he wants to learn and he is ready for it. Mangjin pauses and recalls the moment she witnessed during their competition at the park. After a brief silence, she decides to go ahead, reminding herself that she already said she would. She kneels down and begins the warm-up, bending her wrists back and pressing them into the ground, explaining that proper stretching must come first. Then she moves them through rotating their arms and loosening the shoulder joint, followed by leg stretches where they alternate stepping and stretching each side. After 30 minutes of preparation, Mangjin tells him they can begin. Dong-hee is already visibly tired just from the warm-up. Mangjin explains that the foundation of this move lies in the shoulders and shoulder blades. He has to keep his back completely straight, bend slowly forward, locate the center of his body, and hold it there. Mangjin then pulls off her shirt and gets into position to demonstrate. She stretches both arms out in front, drops her shoulders down, and lowers her body into a prone position, keeping herself supported by her legs. From there, she leans her weight forward, and in one smooth motion, her legs lift off the ground, and her entire body becomes horizontal, held up by nothing but her arms. She holds the planche and explains each part of the movement to Dong-hee as she does it. Dong-hee watches, and when Mangjin finishes and stands back up, he simply says it looks incredible. The moment Mangjin is done, Dong-hee throws himself straight to the ground and says he wants to try right now. Mangjin warns him that it will be extremely difficult for someone who has only just started. Dong-hee tries anyway, and the instant he does, the reality hits him like a wall. His entire body burns with a pain he was not prepared for, and it feels as if his muscles are on the verge of tearing apart. He collapses to the ground almost immediately. Mangjin still praises him for the effort. Dong-hee lies there struggling to catch his breath, then hits the ground with his fist and says with a strange and almost inexplicable kind of joy that it is so much harder than he thought. Mangjin stares at him blankly and points out that this is literally what she told him from the very beginning. She puts her shirt back on and begins heading away from the area. Before she has gone far, she glances back over her shoulder and stops. Dong-hee is still right there on the ground where she left him, and the look on his face makes it very clear that he has absolutely no intention of going anywhere. His expression is completely locked in, with no room for doubt at all. Mangjin stands there for a while, watching and trying to figure out what is going to happen next. By the time evening arrives, the grandfather calls out to Mangjin as he approaches, inviting him inside to eat. He then asks him to go and bring Dong-hee along as well. Mangjin heads back out toward the same spot where he left Dong-hee hours earlier that day. When he arrives, he stops in his tracks. He had assumed long ago that he would have given up and gone home, and privately he thinks it was foolish of her to imagine even for a second that the planche was something a beginner could manage. But what she sees in front of him makes him go completely still. Dong-hee is lying in a prone position, his arms angled slightly outward from his body, trembling all over. Every single muscle in him is visibly straining. Dong-hee squeezes his eyes shut, pulls together every last bit of strength he has, and pushes. Mangjin's eyes go wide and he cannot believe what he is seeing. It only lasts a couple of seconds before he drops onto his elbow and the moment ends. He lies there trying to breathe. Mangjin stays quiet, but his mind is turning. The planche is not a trick as it is one of the most complex full-body movements in existence and it takes most athletes months, sometimes years to achieve even a basic hold. Dong-hee had seen it demonstrated exactly once. Mangjin's mind drifts back to the past once more. He remembers the day his mother walked away and left him, and then his father did the same. He remembers how completely alone he felt and how he had no real desire to keep going. But then he thinks of his grandfather's rough, worn hand reaching out to him. His grandfather was always there, no matter what. Even after Mangjin robbed their home, his grandfather never turned him away. He remembers the moment he saw his grandfather weeping over a photograph of his late grandmother, and something shifted in him that day. From that moment on, Mangjin made a decision. He would succeed. He would study hard and train hard, because he refused to be useless. He had to become someone worth being proud of. It was around that time that a boy came up to him one day and asked Mangjin to show him a cool move. He pulled up a video on his phone of a bar exercise and mentioned casually that street workout had made a lot of people wealthy. That one comment caught Mangjin's full attention. He asked whether people were actually earning money from this kind of training, and after that, everything changed. Mangjin began posting street workout videos, built up a following on social media, and became well known. He is not willing to lose that, and he is not willing to go back to nothing. Back to the present, Dong-hee keeps training anyway, and that confuses Mangjin even more. Mangjin tells him bluntly that nothing will come of it regardless of how hard he tries. Dong-hee flinches slightly, clearly stung by the words, but almost immediately shifts his attention back to figuring out how to strengthen his lower body. Mangjin watches him quietly, and despite himself, he cannot stop thinking about the fact that in such a short amount of time, a complete beginner has nearly caught up to him physically. He cannot figure out what the catch is. Later that evening, the three of them sit down to dinner with the grandfather. The old man cheerfully tells the boys to eat up and have more. Then, to Mangjin's mild surprise, the grandfather once again invites Dong-hee to stay the night since it is already late. Dong-hee turns the offer down, explaining that the last time he did not come home there was complete chaos, and he cannot risk that again. The grandfather turns to Mangjin and asks if they are finished training for the day. Mangjin confirms that they are. Before Mangjin can say anything else, Dong-hee cuts in and asks to be taught more, saying what they did today was not nearly enough. Mangjin refuses. The grandfather steps in and tells Mangjin that he owes Dong-hee a debt of gratitude, so the least he can do is help his friend with his training. Dong-hee immediately sides with the grandfather and reminds Mangjin with a smug look that he should help his friend. For the second time, Mangjin flatly states that they are not friends. He stares down at his plate feeling unsettled and notices the beans sitting there. He hesitates, not quite ready to eat them. Dong-hee notices too, and without any shame starts reaching across with his chopsticks to take them. In an instant, Mangjin swats his chopsticks away sharply with his spoon, stopping him. Mangjin tells him not to dare touch his plate and insists that he will eat the beans himself. Dong-hee gives him a look and points out that Mangjin never actually eats beans. The grandfather watches the whole ridiculous exchange from his side of the table, completely delighted. He says softly to no one in particular that dinner seems to be tasting especially good tonight. The following morning, just as the sun is beginning to rise, Mangjin starts the session by explaining to Dong-hee that he needs to learn how to distribute his body weight properly rather than relying purely on arm strength to hold himself up. Dong-hee gets into position and pushes himself to hold it for as long as possible. Eventually he collapses onto the ground, groaning that he is dying. But even lying there completely exhausted, he breaks into a wide grin and says out loud that this is actually fun. That comment visibly irritates Mangjin. He stares at Dong-hee in silence for a moment, and then finally speaks. He asks if Dong-hee genuinely thinks this is all some kind of joke. He tells him to take it more seriously and warns him that if he keeps treating it like a game for children, Mangjin will take that as a sign that he is not serious and walk away entirely. Dong-hee straightens up immediately, apologizes, and says that he is fully focused now and ready to continue. Then, almost in the same breath, he adds that he used to do many things he found exciting, but once he got good at them, the excitement always faded. Today's training, though, felt genuinely successful to him. Mangjin does not receive that well at all. He turns away and tells Dong-hee sharply that he is too weak, that no amount of effort is going to change that, and that is simply the reality of his situation. He starts walking away and adds over his shoulder that there is no point in him even saying any of this. Dong-hee gets to his feet and calls after him that he is not finished training yet. Mangjin tells him to do whatever he wants and keeps walking. Dong-hee shouts at him to stop. Mangjin spins around and snaps at him to be quiet and leave him alone. Still not paying attention to where he is going, Mangjin walks straight into a concrete pillar with a loud crash. He swears under his breath in pain. Dong-hee bursts out laughing and asks him to say that again. After some time has passed, they end up sitting together on a bench while Mangjin rubs the sore spot on his head. Dong-hee breaks the silence first. He says he genuinely thought Mangjin would never agree to train him and asks why he suddenly changed his mind. Mangjin keeps to himself that he is doing it for his grandfather, not for Dong-hee. Before he can say anything, Dong-hee thanks him sincerely. Mangjin sits quietly for a moment, and then responds that just because they are going through the motion of getting along does not mean they are actually friends. Donghee is genuinely baffled and a little offended. He says he is simply thanking Mangjin for helping him, which seems like a perfectly normal thing to do. Mangjin opens his mouth to respond but finds that he genuinely does not know what to say. Their conversation is cut short by the sound of approaching footsteps and a loud voice calling out that they had found someone. Mangjin and Donghee both turn to look. It is the same group of hooligans they have already had a run-in with. A blonde guy steps forward and confirms this is the one who beat up their people the day before. The large, imposing figure at the center of the group says they have finally found him and tells Donghee to come with them. Nobody answers. One of the others seems to recognize Donghee's face from somewhere. The blonde threatens Donghee and tells him he is going to regret what he did. The others behind him echo the warning. Just as the blonde begins laying out the terms under which he might let Donghee off the hook, something hard and heavy connects with his nose at full force. Blood pours out immediately and he lets out a scream that echoes across the entire area. The rest of the hooligans scramble back in shock. Donghee looks at them all calmly and says they arrived right on time because it is a good moment to stretch his legs. Two of them yell back that he is out of his mind and demand to know how he dares speak to them that way. The blonde guy screams for them to get him. But the large man puts a hand on his shoulder and tells him to wait. When the blonde demands to know why, the big man says he recognizes Donghee, which clearly surprises even him. He explains that he does not know Donghee personally, but he cannot understand why someone like him is even here. He tells the group that 3 years ago, a friend of his was attending a local high school when a kid who danced got into a fight. 8 people came at him. He took down every single one of them. Someone else in the crowd confirms they heard the same story. Meanwhile, the enraged Donghee has already grabbed one of them by the face. The group stares at him in stunned disbelief, wondering whether this is really the same dancing kid from all those years ago. In a flashback, some bullies are annoying nerd students on playground, making them bring water for them. They even brought some money for the bully who is not happy about getting just 30,000 won and tell them if they don't bring the money he requested. He then throws the money at the kid's face, saying if they get them again they are going to teach them some discipline here at BK Middle School. The bully's name is Jungwon, who is the strongest at the middle school district. He gives the students an hour to arrange some mori money and if they are late then he will teach them a lesson. Meanwhile, the bully notices Donghee's gang doing their usual dance practice. At that moment, Donghee shows up and greets the bullies who ask him if he is in the same group as those guys dancing over there. When Donghee says yes, the bully places his hand over his head and says he should stop fooling around and go home to have a nice sleep. After that, the bully pushes him aside and walks away. Donghee then notices a scar on Chanmin's face and asks him about it. Another boy then tells him that earlier those bullies came to them and quarreled, and one of them even threw a cigarette in Chanmin's face. Back in the present, Donghee completely loses his composure and goes absolutely wild, launching into the group of bullies one by one while they stumble back in fear and find themselves desperately wondering what kind of person they have actually gotten themselves into a fight with. Donghee continues to take on the bullies entirely on his own, moving from one to the next without slowing down even for a second. The bully with blonde hair backs away in pure terror, quietly asking himself where on earth this so-called crippled monster even came from. The massively built bully, watching his crew fall apart around him, comes to the grim conclusion that if they end up getting beaten by this one kid then they are going to have no choice but to give up their hold on this entire town. The bullies then come to the painful realization that Donghee has single-handedly taken down every single member of their gang, and with absolutely no other options remaining, they quickly change their tone and suggest that everyone should just calm down and talk things through peacefully instead. Donghee, however, is not the least bit interested in letting any of it go so easily, and he reminds the bullies that they had gone out of their way to mess with and intimidate the grandfather in the first place, and had then walked away afterward without showing even the smallest hint of remorse or offering any kind of apology for what they had done. Just then, the most massive and heavily built bully in the group makes his move and grabs hold of Mangjin, trapping him firmly in his grip and issuing Donghee a cold and threatening warning to stop right where he is or he is going to snap Mangjin's arm. While Donghee's attention is momentarily pulled in that direction and he finds himself distracted, another bully seizes the opportunity and comes charging straight at him from the side, landing an absolutely devastating punch square across his face with full force. The impact sends Donghee crashing hard down onto the ground, and the bully wastes no time in following up by raining down a relentless series of brutal kicks on him while he is down. Mangjin, watching the whole thing, shouts at the top of his lungs at Donghee to stop just lying there taking the hits and to get up and run away from the situation entirely while he still can, and it is right at that critical moment that Donghi's prosthetic leg suddenly and visibly breaks apart from the impact of everything. Upon witnessing that startling sight, Mangjin is absolutely and completely stunned as the shocking truth hits him all at once, the realization that Donghi had been performing and competing at his exact same level this entire time while only having one real leg. Just at that tense and dramatic moment, Joseph's assistant unexpectedly arrives on the scene and announces with complete and utter confidence that she is about to step in and teach absolutely everyone present a memorable lesson. At that very same moment, Joseph arrives at the grandfather's house for a visit, and the grandfather greets him with a look that makes it clear he has been kept waiting and is wondering why he is so late. Joseph settles in and tells the grandfather that it has already been a remarkable 20 years since the day he set a world record for pull-ups right there at the USFK base, and yet somehow it all feels like it happened just yesterday. The grandfather then looks at Joseph warmly and remarks that he himself has turned out to be quite an extraordinary person, having managed to become both a highly successful businessman and a widely recognized athlete all within a surprisingly short amount of time. The grandfather then brings up the fact that since Joseph had made the trip all the way to Korea specifically to seek out people who are dedicated to full-body exercises, he wants to know what Joseph genuinely thinks of Mangjin when he looks at him and observes what he is capable of. Joseph considers the question carefully but responds by saying that he still needs more time to watch and evaluate him further before coming to any firm conclusions. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, Joseph's assistant coolly tells the group of bullies that they need to release the students immediately, and that only if they comply will she even consider letting them walk away and go home in one piece. Upon hearing that, one of the bullies loses his temper and begins hurling insults directly at her, which pushes her past her limit, and she responds by grabbing him and slamming him forcefully into the ground without any hesitation. Another bully then makes the poor decision of calling her an old hag, and she promptly knocks him out cold as well, saying to herself in disbelief and wondering if this is really how Korean people go about making fun of others. Seeing that, one of the massive build guys tries to run away, but Mangjin grabs his hand, saying he should apologize to his grandfather. However, Mangjin is holding his arm so tight that it actually makes him wonder how much strength he really has. He tries to punch Mangjin so that he could free him, but no matter what he does, Mangjin holds his arm even tighter. He then steps forward with burning intensity in his eyes and declares that he is absolutely not going to let anyone get away with laying a single hand on his grandfather, who happens to be the only family he has left in this entire world. Right at that charged and emotional moment, Donghi suddenly appears on the scene and calmly turns to the thug, asking him whether he still remembers the promise that he had made earlier in their confrontation. Without giving the thug even a second to process or respond, Donghi immediately follows through and drops him completely with a single clean and powerful knee strike that puts him out cold on the spot. Afterward, Donghi winces and privately acknowledges to himself that those guys had really done a number on his prosthetic leg and caused some serious damage to it during the whole ordeal. Mangjin notices the situation with Donghi's leg and asks him directly what had happened to it, but Donghi stays completely quiet and does not offer any kind of response or explanation, which causes Mangjin to pause and reflect on the silence for a moment. Mangjin comes to the understanding on his own that it must genuinely be a very difficult and sensitive thing for Donghi to open up and talk about anything related to his leg, and he does not push any further. He also finds himself thinking deeply about how truly remarkable and impressive it is that Donghi has been pushing through intense workouts with only one real leg this entire time, and that even under such incredibly challenging conditions he somehow manages to approach it all with a sense of genuine joy and enthusiasm. Mangjin then softens slightly and asks Donghi what had first motivated him to get into working out in the first place, and Donghi answers that it just looked really cool to him. That night, the grandfather comes out of the house and immediately starts shouting in confusion, unable to understand what happened. He catches the group at the gate and anxiously asks what they were doing and why everyone is injured. Mangjin holds onto Donghi's arm while Donghi is the first to speak up, explaining that they ran into a boar on the way home. Joseph then turns to his assistant, since he assumes she missed everything that happened. Assistant relays what Donghi said and adds that the leader of the hooligans has escaped. Assistant mentions that the attackers had a tattoo she recognized, describing it as something that looked like a fishbone. When Joseph hears this, he says they need to find out more about whoever these people are, and Assistant agrees with him. Meanwhile, the grandfather has already pulled out a first aid kit and starts helping Donghi and Mangjin treat their wounds. Joseph walks over to Donghi and offers to take him home. Before they leave, Donghi asks Joseph to answer honestly whether he already knew that Mangjin was living with his grandfather and whether he sent Donghi there on purpose. He states plainly that his guess is Joseph wants to bring him onto the team. Joseph just laughs it off and suggests they wait and see what happens. While the grandfather puts a bandage on Mangjin's arm, Joseph has a quiet conversation with Mangjin off to the side and hands him his business card. Mangjin stares at it in silence, clearly deep in thought about something. The grandfather stands behind him and watches everything carefully without saying a word. Joseph tells Mangjin to take his time and think it over, then calls for Donghee to come with him. Mangjin watches quietly as Donghee, Sun, and Joseph all leave together. After a while, Mangjin is still sitting on the front step, turning Joseph's business card over in his hands. The grandfather comes up and gently tells him that it is getting late and that he should come inside to eat and then get some rest. He looks more closely at Mangjin and asks if he is still thinking about Joseph's proposal. Mangjin responds by reminding his grandfather that he always promised he would make him proud and make him happy. He thinks back to the time he saved up and bought his grandfather a new set of clothes, but now he wants to do even more than that. His thoughts then shift to Donghee, and he finds himself unable to understand how Donghee can keep training and genuinely enjoy himself despite only having one leg. The grandfather smiles warmly and sits down beside Mangjin on the step. He admits that he always worried he could never truly replace Mangjin's parents, but now he feels genuinely proud of the person Mangjin has become. He also mentions that Mangjin has found himself a good friend. Mangjin immediately blurts out that they are not friends, which surprises the grandfather. The grandfather reaches out to him and tells Mangjin that he knows he still feels guilty about the time he broke into their house when he was young. He also knows that Mangjin still has the comb that belonged to his late grandmother. But he tells Mangjin not to carry that guilt anymore, because the comb is just an ordinary object. To him, Mangjin is the most important thing in the world, and all he wants is for Mangjin to be happy. He asks him to stop overthinking everything and to simply do what he truly wants. The next morning, the workout club gathers at school as usual. Donghee arrives and immediately looks up with wide eyes, completely shocked to find a massive new extension built right there in the schoolyard. He cannot understand where it came from or when it was even put up. Soya tells him it was brought in by helicopter just a few days ago. Genie adds that according to Joseph, this is their brand new training space. Soya then asks Donghee whether he got his dentures fixed and what his mother said when she found out. Donghee confirms that he did get them repaired, and then recalls the memory of his mother standing there furious with a frying pan, looking as though she was ready to strike him on the spot. The girls wince hearing that. Out of nowhere, as he always seems to do, Joseph suddenly appears wearing a bright crimson jacket. He greets everyone cheerfully and manages to startle Donghee completely. He welcomes the group to the new workout facility, telling them he ordered it specifically for them. They all head inside and the moment Donghee steps through the door his jaw drops. The space is enormous and packed with all kinds of equipment. Joseph points out that there are also bathrooms and showers available, making it just about the perfect training environment. He tells them their sessions will be held here from now on. Donghee immediately wants to get started and turns to Genie, calling her master and asking if she is ready to train. Genie has already changed into her workout clothes and confirms without hesitation. Donghee is stunned at how fast she got ready. Joseph watches from the side with a smile and casually mentions that there is still one more person they are waiting for. Right at that moment, the final person walks through the door and into the gym. Soya spins around and her mouth falls open the instant she recognizes who it is. It is Mangjin, who has apparently decided to accept Joseph's offer after all. Shortly after, Mangjin happens to catch a glimpse of Genie training and grows curious, turning to Donghee and asking him how he came to know her. Donghee replies that he had originally met her at the park and that she is his master, which leaves Mangjin genuinely confused and puzzled by the answer. Donghee then goes on to explain that it does not really matter even if people find it strange that he calls her his master, because in the blood alliance that exists between a master and their disciple, details like age and size simply do not matter at all. Mangjin then asks him whether he is actually older than her, trying to wrap his head around the whole dynamic between the two of them. Mangjin then shifts his focus back to Genie and comments that he honestly had no idea that there was anyone in Korea performing at that kind of skill level and points out that street workout performance tend to generally be better and cleaner when the athlete is on the lighter side. He further adds that at that level of athleticism, as an athlete's muscle mass continues to grow and develop, their overall body weight naturally goes up along with it as a result. He also finds himself thinking that she appears to have a remarkably well-developed motor nerve, and that it is genuinely surprising and impressive to see her pulling off such high-level movements with such a small and compact body. Later on, Mangjin makes the decision to take his leave and genuinely thanks Donghee for stepping up and standing his ground both for him and for his grandfather during the whole ordeal. Once he walks away, Joseph's assistant turns to the others and admits that she is quite surprised that Mangjin turned the offer down, because based on all the research she had done on him beforehand, she was fairly confident that he would agree to it given that he is currently in need of money for a place to live. Jumping forward about a month after the Bare Body Exercise Club had been officially established at the school, it becomes clear that virtually nobody at the school is paying any real attention to or showing any interest in the club whatsoever. Joseph then makes the bold decision to place the physical education department known as Barbados behind the school, and the move immediately rubs all of the other teachers the wrong way and turns them completely against the idea. The unhappy teachers march straight to the principal's office to lodge their complaints about the whole situation, but Joseph shows up right there and calmly points out that it has been years since the sports department has managed to produce any noteworthy or meaningful results in any competition. One of the teachers immediately loses his temper upon hearing this and fires back at Joseph, accusing him of being completely shameless for using the school purely as a vehicle to line his own pockets and make money. Joseph, however, responds coolly and tells them that they have gotten the wrong idea entirely, assuring everyone that he is actually planning to invest and spend a very significant amount of money for the benefit of the school. The teacher tells Joseph that he has no idea what he is trying to do, but he refuses to admit it and believes that a scheme is still a scheme regardless. Joseph then announces that he is willing to support them by covering their department's operating expenses, specifying that the amount will be equal to the annual budget of each sports department. Joseph then makes it clear that he is not offering this money for nothing, revealing that what he wants in return is for their club to take part in a workout competition. He explains that since it is a bare body exercise club, the competition event will be centered around body exercises. He also adds that if they manage to beat him, he will go ahead and double their annual budget as well. After considering everything that has been put on the table, the teachers decide to accept Joseph's challenge, but make it clear that they want the competition to be completely fair and square from start to finish. Later that same night, all of the teachers head out together and decide to spend the evening living it up to the absolute fullest, completely convinced in their minds that a massive and life-changing amount of money is going to be flowing their way come next week. One of the other teachers openly admits that he never in a million years expected Joseph to be the one to suggest and propose the challenge in the manner that he did, and the group collectively dismisses Joseph as someone who is simply not very bright and does not fully understand what he has gotten himself into. Another teacher confidently adds that even if things get a little messy or complicated along the way, they can always just overpower and push things in their favor by using the sheer numbers of students they have at their disposal, and that absolutely nobody is going to step up or do anything meaningful about it regardless. The following day arrives and all of the teachers show up with students pulled from their various clubs in tow, bringing along the basketball team, the football club, and the track and field club all together as a show of overwhelming force and numbers. Everyone makes it to the ground right on schedule and on time, but Joseph is nowhere to be found, prompting one of the teachers to casually point out that there are still a good 10 minutes remaining before their agreed-upon appointment time is officially due to start. Just at that moment, a group of YouTubers unexpectedly shows up on the scene, setting up equipment and getting ready to live-stream the entire match online for a wide audience, and among them is a strikingly pretty girl who carries herself with the polished and glamorous appearance of a genuine idol. Shortly after, Joseph and the rest of his team finally make their arrival, and Joseph immediately takes in the scene and notices with some amusement that the teachers have gone out of their way to bring along an impressively large and intimidating crowd of students with them. The teacher says that all of their students are fan of him, so they said they would go see him and all of them wants to participate. Joseph straight away tells the teacher that it doesn't matter and all of them can participate, surprising him. Joseph then says that there was no mention of a limit on the number of people and says that it was because the teachers gave him a sign saying, they will not be involved in the rules and events of the match. Upon hearing that, the teachers freaks out as they have never signed something like that, and turns out last night a girl approached them asking to pay in advance for the drinks, and during that time they signed a contract as they were too drunk to even pay attention. Joseph goes even further and drops another bombshell by informing them that he has also managed to record and document all of their scheming plans to illegally siphon off and pocket the school's money for themselves, leaving the teacher visibly shaken and increasingly nervous with nowhere left to turn. The now anxious teacher asks Joseph about how many members are currently in their club, and Joseph responds by confirming that there are 3 members in total, but that only Genie will actually be stepping up and taking part in the competition itself. Flashing back to the previous day, Joseph had sat down with both Dong-hee and Genie and laid absolutely everything out for them openly and honestly, making it clear to both of them that they are placing their complete and total trust in Genie to carry everything on her shoulders and deliver for the club. Joseph also points out that all of the other competing teams have already made the mistake of looking down on and completely dismissing this particular form of exercise as something does not worthy of their serious attention. Returning to the present moment, Genie stands there feeling the nerves creeping in heavily as she quietly wonders to herself whether she is truly capable of actually pulling off a win in this situation. Joseph then steps in and reveals to everyone that the specific competition that has been arranged is going to be the balance board challenge, which he explains is a specialized exercise device that involves balancing on top of a wide and unstable board, and is particularly effective at strengthening the core muscles while simultaneously activating a wide range of different muscles throughout the entire body. He also reassures everyone that the rules governing the competition are refreshingly simple and straightforward, stating that whichever competitor manages to stay on the board for the longest amount of time without falling off will be declared the winner. After everything settles, Joseph addresses everyone and announces that starting right at that very moment, the moment he blows his whistle, everyone needs to get themselves up and onto the power board as quickly as possible. He also explains that all of the rounds will be connected through a balance board, and that the number of rounds is completely unlimited, but that the game will automatically come to an end the moment there is only a single person left standing on their board. The instant the whistle blows and the competition kicks off, everyone scrambles and climbs onto their respective balance boards, but a large number of them end up losing their footing and tumbling off almost immediately after getting on. The teacher watching from the sidelines also takes note of the fact that within just the first few seconds of the competition starting, there is already a rapid and continuous stream of dropouts falling off one right after another at a surprising pace. He then raises his voice and shouts at all of the eliminated participants to clear themselves off the field without wasting any more time. After the explosive and chaotic opening elimination round runs its course, the total number of remaining competitors standing on their boards comes down to just 7 people altogether. Dong-hee watches Genie from where he stands and is genuinely blown away, feeling deeply impressed by the fact that she is holding her position on the board without even the slightest visible tremor or wobble while everyone else around her struggles. Then, to everyone's complete surprise, Joseph casually turns to the remaining competitors and asks them with a relaxed smile whether they would like him to go ahead and kick off the first real round. He then says that they simply need to perform one squat on the board, but no matter how hard the players try to squat, none of them manage to do it. Despite that, the player starts to get eliminated, but when Genie tries to squat, she happens to do it correctly. Now there are only 5 people left, and Joseph then tells the boys to bring the basketballs, surprisingly everyone. He then says that in this round they have to dodge obstacles even though they are just basketball. He also says that if each team tries to hit the opponent at a certain distance, contestants just have to dodge or drop out. He also says that they have to throw the ball until it runs out and they are done, but teachers are shocked and wonders how one is even able to avoid that. The round starts off with Soya and the others throwing the ball at the contestants, who tries their best to dodge it without falling on the ground. The teachers watching from the sidelines begin to notice that Genie is somehow dodging and avoiding everything in a strangely effortless, and the opposing team ends up making the costly mistake of throwing the ball back and forth among themselves, which ultimately leads to their own elimination. Dong-hee watches on and thinks to himself that Genie appears to be in such a completely calm throughout the whole thing, which only further confirms to him just how genuinely remarkable she truly is. Joseph also finds himself observing her closely and thinks that she possesses an innate motor nerve and a natural sense of balance that is an exceptionally rare talent to come across, and he reflects that the true and underlying purpose of this entire match was never really about winning but rather about giving the world a proper chance to see and discover Genie for who she really is. He also thinks to himself that competing against established sports teams in any kind of normal and conventional sport would have been close to impossible for them to win, and that by choosing a unique yet genuinely challenging tool like the balance board, it would naturally draw people in and make them stop and marvel when they witness Genie's performance up close. With all of the balls now completely gone and used up, the competition narrows all the way down to just 2 people remaining on their boards facing each other. In the decisive final round, the 2 competitors are required to perform a full handstand directly on top of the board, and Genie pulls it off so easily, leaving everyone shocked. The following day at school, a teacher hands out punishment to a group of female students, and they are all made to hold plank positions as a result. Once they are finally released and free to go, the girls turn to another girl named Jun and tell her that they really need to do something about that teacher, but Jun immediately turns on them with barely contained fury. She tells them straight to their faces that they are the ones who had taken their own classmates and handed them over to boys from another school, and she warns them in no uncertain terms that if they ever pull something like that again, she is going to make them regret it. Later at the cafeteria, a different group of girls makes their way over to Jun and offers her a sincere apology, recognizing that she had fought on their behalf and ended up getting herself into trouble because of it. Jun accepts their words and tells them to stay careful and to be very selective about who they choose to trust these days, and the girls respond warmly by extending an invitation for her to come and hang out with them later. Jun's close friend sitting beside her remarks that she is such a genuinely good person who is always out there getting into fights on behalf of other people. She then asks Jun whether she has happened to come across a particular video that has been making serious waves online recently, going on to explain that the video in question had been uploaded to a site called NTube just 2 days ago. She explains that the title is Common K High School Girls Motor Nerves, and the video turns out to be of Genie, who is doing handstand on the board. Soon, when Genie gets back to school, everyone just surrounds her, saying she has become an NTube star and how she is doing an amazing job. Later that same night, Genie's sister is practically bouncing off the walls with excitement as she tells Genie that she also got the chance to watch her video and that it was absolutely amazing to see. Genie's sister also points out that Genie had been going out every single day to work out and had now become very popular as a result of everything, but Genie brushes it off and replies that she really could not help it since the whole thing had simply started out as a game that took place in the clubroom at school. While the two of them are busy cleaning the dishes together, Genie's sister brings up the thought that has clearly been on both of their minds, asking Genie what their mother is going to have to say once she finds out that Genie had appeared in that video for the whole world to see. Shortly after that conversation, Genie receives a phone call from Dong-hee, who immediately bursts into loud and enthusiastic shouting the moment she picks up, telling her that he has just watched her video and that it was incredibly cool and that it has already surpassed over 1 million views. Dong-hee also tells her with complete sincerity that she has always had the skills and the talent, and that it was really only ever a matter of time before the rest of the world caught on and she became famous. Just at that moment, Genie's mother walks through the door and wastes absolutely no time in bringing up the fact that she had already seen the video herself, having been shown it by one of the employees at her company earlier that day. Genie's mother then talks to her about it, asking what kind of club is she attending all of a sudden. She then continues to scold Genie, saying she is a high school student now and this is a time she has to focus on her future. The mother also mentions that she is already having a hard time because of Jun, who fought again at school. That night, Genie finds herself sitting alone feeling genuinely confused and uncertain, quietly wondering to herself whether she should really continue pushing forward and seriously pursuing the workout path she has found herself on. Her thoughts then drift to her father, who had passed away at a far too early age, leaving Genie and her sister with nothing but their mother to hold on to and lean on. Both Genie and her sister had witnessed firsthand the devastating look that came over their mother's face in the wake of losing their father. Wanting desperately to ease even a small portion of that heavy burden she was carrying, the two of them had taken it upon themselves to start handling the house chores and keeping things running at home to help her out however they could. Despite all of their efforts though, their mother remained deeply consumed by agony and simply could not bring herself to forget their father or move past the grief, and as time went on she began burying herself completely in work as a way of coping, and slowly but surely the warmth and happiness that had once filled their home quietly disappeared altogether. Then one particular day, while Genie was walking through a nearby park, she happened to notice someone hanging from an iron bar and found herself genuinely curious about why anyone would choose to do something like that. Feeling a sudden and unexplainable pull toward it, she walked up and grabbed onto the iron bar herself to give it a try for the very first time in her life, never once expecting that the pain it would put her through would feel anywhere near as intense as it actually did. Despite the pain that came with it, Genie found herself becoming completely and utterly obsessed with the iron bar and made it a point to come back and work on it every single day without fail. Genie came to realize that every single time she showed up at that iron bar, the heavy and suffocating feeling that had been sitting in her chest would simply melt away, and she genuinely loved the sensation of finally being able to breathe freely again that came along with it. Back in the present, Genie heads outside to get a workout in, reflecting to herself that it has been quite a while since she last trained out in the open at night, and that lately she has been getting most of her practice done at school every day. She also finds herself thinking that ever since Dong-hee came into her life, she has had the wonderful opportunity to work out alongside a whole group of people rather than always being on her own. Just at that moment, right in the middle of all those thoughts swirling around in her head, Genie suddenly comes face to face with Dong-hee himself standing right there in the park. Genie turns to Dong-hee and asks whether he comes out to practice at this particular spot every single day, and Dong-hee replies that this place just feels like the most comfortable and natural spot for him to be. He goes on to explain that the weather gets so unbearably hot during the summer months that his prosthetic leg becomes extremely uncomfortable to wear, because whenever the outer part gets sweaty it ends up corroding and damaging the inside over time. He then opens up and shares that during the very first summer after his leg injury, he had developed severe inflammation because he had not yet figured out how to properly manage and care for it, and as a result he could not even walk properly for several days straight. Dong-hee also admits honestly that he genuinely hated life and everything about it during that dark period, but quickly follows it up by saying that these days things feel completely different and that he finds himself having fun and enjoying every single day as it comes. Hearing all of that, Genie sits quietly with her thoughts and finds herself feeling a sense of envy toward him, thinking about how he always carries such a bright and positive energy with him everywhere he goes, while she on the other hand always seems to be the one walking around feeling weighed down and gloomy all the time. Dong-hee picks up on the fact that something seems a little off with her and gently asks whether everything is okay. Genie responds by telling him that she has genuinely been feeling thankful for the club lately, admitting that she does not think she has ever had this much fun at any other point in her life, and that because of that she has been feeling strangely anxious recently about whether she will be able to keep experiencing this kind of happiness going forward. Dong-hee listens but finds himself genuinely unsure of what exactly she means by all of it, and before the conversation can go any further, Jun's voice suddenly calls out for Genie from nearby. Genie then turns to Dong-hee and tells him that her sister is looking for her and that she has to head off now. Genie then runs back to Jun saying she went out for a short walk, but Jun asks who she was with earlier. The next day, Dong-hee plans on exercising because he slept well. On his way, he thinks about static and dynamic styles, knowing that freestyle is a mix of the two. Dong-hee then notices a foreigner girl walking towards the ground and greets her, but she starts talking in some other language. Dong-hee realizes that the girl speaks Korean fluently and starts to wonder who she really is and why she is outside their gym. The foreigner then shows him the video of Genie, so Dong-hee thinks that she must be looking for her. The girl then sits on the ground feeling frustrated, but then she smells some people eating barbecue. Dong-hee then makes the kind decision to go and get her something to eat, and while he is at it the girl looks up at him and asks him what his name is. As the two of them sit together eating, a piece of her food accidentally slips and is about to fall, but the girl immediately reacts on pure instinct alone, grabbing onto the bench and rolling herself over with remarkable speed and agility in order to snatch the falling piece up before it hits the ground, and then casually pops it into her mouth as if nothing out of the ordinary had just happened. Dong-hee watches the whole thing unfold in front of him and is left completely and utterly stunned by what he has just witnessed. Just at that moment, Soya and Genie show up together and both of them stop in their tracks, visibly surprised to find Dong-hee standing right next to a foreign girl they have never seen before. Dong-hee turns to them and explains that she had actually come all this way specifically looking for Genie. The girl then shifts her full attention over to Genie and begins studying her closely and carefully with great curiosity. Right at that moment, Joseph and his assistant arrive on the scene together, and the instant the girl's eyes land on Joseph she immediately takes off running toward him and throws her arms around him in an enthusiastic and warm hug. The assistant then turns to Dong-hee and fills him in by explaining that the girl's name is Fabian Gracie, that she has been a long-time devoted fan of Joseph, and that she is herself a street workout athlete. After that, they all take Fabian to the gym where she starts acting weird, so Dong-hee wonders if she is really an athlete. Soya believes that she must have seen her somewhere, and Joseph's assistant tells them that she is the youngest female player in Spain. Fabian then starts speaking Korean fluently that freaks out Dong-hee, and she tells him that she was just teasing him earlier and how the cookie that they ate was good. Joseph then asks Fabian why she is here and where are her parents, but she says she came here all alone to see him. Joseph's assistant tells Dong-hee that Fabian has followed Joseph well since childhood, so he knows her parents well. Fabian goes on to share that she had come across Genie's video just a few days earlier and found it genuinely impressive, pointing out that it was clear from watching it that Genie possesses solid and natural athleticism. Fabian also brings up an observation that has been sitting on her mind, mentioning that there seems to be a slightly awkward and disconnected feeling to Genie's street workout that she cannot quite put her finger on, and the comment immediately sparks curiosity in everyone present. Fabian carefully explains that each individual move that Genie performs on its own is actually quite good, but then poses the question of whether Genie has ever really tried linking and connecting her movements together into one continuous flowing sequence. Genie honestly admits that she has not done a whole lot of freestyle work and has not had much experience with it, and hearing that, Fabian encourages her and asks her to go ahead and show everyone what her freestyle looks like. Genie steps up and gets herself ready, taking a moment to gather her thoughts and reminding herself that freestyle is essentially a discipline in which a wide variety of different movements are woven together and performed in combination, with the overall perfection and smoothness of how those movements connect being the main thing that is being evaluated. Fabian then tells everyone to go ahead and turn on the music, and Dong-hee quickly turns to Soya and asks whether she happens to have any music suitable for freestyle. Soya responds by saying that she has something along those lines, adding that the general idea is that if they manage to create a smooth and natural flow with the moves they have already prepared, it will end up being positively reflected in their overall score. Genie then steps up and kicks things off with a clean muscle up before transitioning rapidly into a handstand and then twisting her entire body around to grab hold of the bar once again with impressive control. However, while attempting to execute her next move in the sequence, Genie loses her grip and ends up coming down and landing on the mat below. Shortly after, Fabian eagerly jumps up and gets herself onto the bar as well, announcing with excitement that it is now her turn to get up there and show everyone what freestyle really looks like. What follows is a breathtaking performance from Fabian as she moves and flows effortlessly and naturally with the rhythm and beat of the music playing in the background. She then brings her routine toward its conclusion with a beautifully executed back lever technique, but just before she wraps everything up completely, she suddenly shifts into a one-arm back lever that nobody in the crowd saw coming, sending an immediate wave of shock and disbelief rippling through everyone watching. Dong-hee stands there taking it all in and thinks to himself that the overall degree of perfection in her individual movements appears to be on a fairly similar level to Genie's, but the key difference is the way her moves and the entire flow of her routine shift and adapt naturally along with the changing rhythm of the music in a way that feels completely alive and connected. Fabian then steps down and walks over to Genie, looking her in the eye and telling her directly that she is genuinely one of the best non-professional athletes she has ever had the chance to come across and observe. She then asks Genie honestly whether she still carries a sense of inadequacy about herself as an athlete, and follows it up with a straightforward and sobering piece of advice, telling her that if she goes out and presents what she currently has to an audience in its present state, the people watching are simply not going to feel compelled or motivated enough to come back and see more of it. The following day, Joseph's assistant comes to him and informs him that the total number of students who have shown up wanting to learn full body workouts that day has reached 34 people. Joseph takes in the news and thinks to himself that while they may not be able to get all of these students directly into Barbados, it is becoming increasingly clear that the full body workout has managed to make a strong and lasting impression on the eyes and minds of the student body. The assistant then turns to Joseph and asks him what his plans are for the club activities moving forward, but rather than giving her a straight answer, Joseph simply hands her a newspaper and gestures for her to read it. Joseph explains to her that there is a very specific and deliberate reason behind why Fabian has made the trip all the way to Korea entirely on her own, and points out that it appears Europe has gone ahead and formed a completely separate and dedicated team for this particular event. The assistant tells Joseph that time is quickly running out and that they are going to need to take some kind of decisive action soon. She also brings up her own assessment, suggesting that Genie is the only one who can realistically prepare in time, but Joseph surprises her by shaking his head and saying that it is actually Dong-hee he has in mind. Flashing back to a few days prior, when Joseph arrives at the gym he finds Dong-hee already there and pushing himself through an intense and focused practice session. Joseph walks over and asks him how everything went during his visit with Mangjin and his grandfather, and Dong-hee replies that all kinds of different things happened and came up during his time there. Dong-hee then shares that he had gone ahead and asked the grandfather to teach him the planche, and that the grandfather had actually gone through with teaching it to him as well. Joseph says that the planche is one of the ultimate movements of the full body movement and it's like a novice powerlifter can achieve 6,700 in 3 years of hard work. He also explains that planche is a movement that can never be done by practicing for a day or two and that is the reason why it's called the ultimate. Upon hearing that, Dong-hee decides to show Joseph that he can do planche and he happens to stay 2 seconds in that. Back in present, Joseph tells his assistant that Dong-hee is really an amazing guy and he didn't know he had it in him. Shortly after, Joseph receives a phone call from Genie's mother, who wastes no time in bringing up the fact that her daughter has been actively involved in that club and that there are even videos of her circulating on the internet for everyone to see. Genie's mother then makes her position very clear by stating that she does not think it is particularly efficient or productive for her daughter to be spending her time at that club and tells Joseph directly that she wants her daughter withdrawn from it as soon as possible. Joseph calmly asks her to explain her reasoning behind the request, and Genie's mother responds by saying that her daughter's future is an extremely important matter to her, and that she simply does not want her child wasting such valuable time on extracurricular activities when there are far more important things to be focusing on. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, Jun finds herself making her way to a strange and unfamiliar location after the girls from her school had reached out and asked her to come meet them there. Without any warning, the school bullies suddenly appear on the scene and make it abundantly clear that they have come specifically to settle things with Jun once and for all. Jun stands her ground and fires back at them, warning the group that if they decide to mess with her they are going to end up in a state where they will not even be able to cover their faces with makeup afterward. After shoving one of the girls firmly out of her path, Jun breaks into a run and charges straight toward another one, her mind racing as she frantically tries to figure out what the best move is in a situation like this. In the middle of all the chaos, Jun suddenly runs directly into Dong-hee, who takes one look at her and immediately asks whether she is doing okay. The moment Jun realizes that Dong-hee is no longer right beside her, she immediately tries to make a break for it and find a way out, but the bullies cut her off and appear directly in her path before she can get anywhere. One of the guys steps forward holding a baseball bat and calmly points out that while this abandoned factory site may feel like a confusing maze to them, this entire block belongs to his crew and they know every single corner and pathway of it like the back of their hands. In other words, he makes it crystal clear that no matter how fast they run, there is simply no way out of this place for them. Jun turns to Dong-hee and urgently tells him to get out of there and save himself, but rather than turning and running like she expects, Dong-hee grabs a bundle of garbage and hurls it directly at the bullies, sending a thick cloud of smoke and debris billowing out across the entire area and throwing everyone into confusion. Dong-hee then reaches out and grabs Jun firmly by the hand and pulls her along with him as he moves. The guy holding the bat turns out to be none other than Kyung-soo, and he is so consumed with rage over what just happened that he ends up bending the metal bat clean out of shape with his bare hands. Kyung-soo then barks at the rest of the group, telling them that the two of them could not have gotten very far yet, and orders everyone to scatter in different directions and track them down immediately. Meanwhile, Jun is absolutely furious at Dong-hee for not simply running away when he had the chance, and Dong-hee responds by telling her plainly that they were right in the middle of a dangerous situation and there was no way he could have just stood by and ignored it. Jun also tells him that she can deal with all of those guys, but Dong-hee wonders if she can really do. Jun also says that even if she just looks like this, she is second dan in Taekwondo and he shouldn't underestimate a woman. Dong-hee then asks her if she come here because she got lost, and she says that it's not it and it's a place to meet up with school friends. Just then, they hear noises of the bullies shouting asking Jun where she hid. The bully then says that she scared the girls who called Jun here so they immediately lower themselves. Jun then wonders how she can even do with that many people and even if she tries to run away, she will get lost. Jun then tells Dong-hee that she is going to face them alone, but Dong-hee says that he will help her out. After that, Jun throws some gasoline packets at the bullies and then the bullies run after her. The girls chasing after her find themselves completely puzzled, wondering amongst themselves when Jun had gotten so fast at running, and before long the entire group ends up inside an old warehouse without fully realizing how they got there. Suddenly, a massive rock comes crashing down onto the ground and all of the bullies find themselves completely trapped inside with no easy way out. Jun turns to Dong-hee with wide eyes and asks him how on earth he knew about any of this, and whether this place actually has some kind of blocked floor hidden within it. Dong-hee calmly explains that this particular factory is actually a place he has been coming to regularly ever since he was a small child and knows like the back of his hand. He goes on to share that when he was young, he used to use this entire neighborhood as his personal hideout where he and his friends would come to play and hang around together. However, Kyung-soo reaches out and grabs hold of Jun, and another bully also appears on the scene, making it clear that they knew this place just as well and had not been expecting things to play out the way they did. Kyung-soo then turns his attention to Dong-hee and demands to know where he even appeared from and what exactly he thinks he is doing there. Dong-hee's expression hardens immediately and he tells Kyung-soo to get his hands off of her right now, and the sheer intensity behind his words is enough to send a visible wave of fear through Kyung-soo. Feeling thoroughly intimidated and shaken, the bullies release Jun and take off running without looking back. Dong-hee then makes sure Jun gets safely back home, and even after everything has settled down she finds herself still quietly wondering to herself why exactly he had gone out of his way to help her in the first place. That night, the entire group turns on Kyung-soo with barely contained fury, furious at him for abandoning all of them and fleeing on his own while they were left behind to deal with the consequences. They all close in around him and demand that he explain himself and account for his actions, but Kyung-soo loses his temper right back at them and aggressively tells them that if any of them have a problem with what he did, then they are more than welcome to step up and go against him directly. Just at that tense moment, two guys named Wooseop and Chunchik make their entrance, and the entire group immediately straightens up and bows in front of them without a moment of hesitation. The guy with purple hair turns his gaze toward Kyung-soo and casually asks whether he came all the way here just to see him at work, and whether the number of kids being sent their way these days has gone down at all. Kyung-soo responds by explaining that some unknown guy had been showing up and interfering in their territory, and that a girl he happens to know is in the same class as the girl who is connected to that interfering guy. However, Chunchik suddenly drives a hard punch straight into Kyungsu's chest, looking at him coldly and asking whether he seriously came all this way just to tell him something as insignificant as that. On the other side of town, Genie arrives back home only to find her mother already there, having gotten off work unusually early that day. Genie's mother sits her down and tells her that she has been thinking about transferring her to another place entirely, adding that she has already found what she believes to be a much better and more suitable school for Genie to focus on her studies. She also admits honestly that the truth is she has not been paying nearly enough attention to Genie up until this point, and that she genuinely feels that right now is the single most critical and important period of her daughter's life, and that she does not think continuing to attend the kind of school she is currently at is doing her any real good. Genie tries to speak up and say something in response, but her mother cuts her off and mentions that they have a relative's house available to them so they will be able to continue attending school without any disruption. Genie's mother then looks at her directly and asks whether she is going to come along with her, and even though every part of Genie does not want to agree to it, she pushes her true feelings aside and tells her mother that she will go with her. That same night, Genie sits alone with her thoughts and reflects on the fact that for her, exercise has always been a form of escape from everything else, a place where she can quiet her mind and finally breathe, but the moment she steps back through her front door, that suffocating feeling closes right back in around her all over again. Afterward, Genie makes her way back out to the park once more, her mind heavy with the thought that all throughout her life people have criticized her and shown absolutely no interest in joining her or supporting her when it came to working out. Genie reaches up and grabs hold of the metal rod and attempts to pull off a handstand, but when she pushes herself up into the jump she misses the rod entirely and finds herself falling through the air with nothing to grab onto. Just before she can hit the ground, Dong-hee throws himself forward and manages to catch her right in time. Meanwhile, at that very same moment across town, Kyung-soo is busy filling in two other guys and telling them that he had been trying to deal with a girl who had been getting in their way, but that some unexpected guy had suddenly jumped into the situation out of nowhere. Kyung-soo also adds that the boy had one broken leg and was wearing a Samyong High School uniform when he showed up. Upon hearing those specific details, one of the guys hopes to himself that it is not the same person he already has in mind. Dong-hee looks at Genie with concern and asks her directly whether she has made some kind of mistake, because it has been pretty clear for quite a while now that something has been weighing heavily on her mind. Genie responds that she has just always been full of mistakes going all the way back to before. Dong-hee gently tells her that she can come to him whenever she has something on her mind, and hearing that openness from him, Genie finally lets everything out and tells Dong-hee the whole story. Dong-hee is visibly shaken by the news and reacts with genuine distress upon learning that Genie is going to be moving away soon and will no longer be part of the club. Genie quickly apologizes to him and acknowledges that she is being selfish in the way she is feeling about everything right now, and goes on to explain that for a very long time she had always done exactly what her mother told her to do without question, and that every single time the image of her mother's tear-streaked face after her father passed away crept back into her mind, she told herself that she could not afford to make things any harder for her mother than they already were. Shifting into a flashback from when Genie was just a small child, she is seen excitedly holding up something she had drawn on paper and showing it to her father, who looks at it warmly and tells her that it looks absolutely wonderful. He then encourages her to go and show it to her mother as well, but Genie replies with a hint of disappointment that her mom is always too busy and never takes the time to look at her drawings. Despite that, Genie musters up the courage to go and show the drawing to her mother anyway, and her mother's face immediately lights up with genuine excitement and delight upon seeing it. She also promises Genie that she will wrap up her work early that day and come home, and that when she does she is going to make her something truly delicious to eat. After Genie's father passed away, Genie and her sister used to make food for their mother when she was sick. Genie's mother tastes the food and thinks that it's even more delicious and says that her daughters are the best in the whole world. Genie wished her mom always smiled like this while she has been saying only yes. Genie then tells Dong-hee that she just can't help it, and it's pity but the clubs and schools are over. Dong-hee says that for Joseph there's a chance to demonstrate a street workout at some event sometime in the summer and asks Genie if she still wants to go. Genie starts to hesitate and brings up the fact that she is moving out as a reason to hold back, but Dong-hee brushes past her hesitation and tells her straight up that he can clearly see that she wants to stay and that they can absolutely keep working out together regardless. Genie responds by saying that she is still genuinely unsure about everything, and that if her mother is set against it then there is simply no way she is going to be able to continue working out no matter how much she wants to. After that, Dong-hee turns back to the metal rod and proceeds to demonstrate the exact same handstand that Genie herself performs, pulling it off cleanly right in front of her. He then goes ahead and shows her another move that she used to do as well, which catches her completely off guard and leaves her visibly surprised. Dong-hee then turns to her and explains that this was exactly what she had done on the very day that the two of them first met, and that from that day forward he had made a firm personal decision that he absolutely had to learn how to do that move himself no matter what it took. He goes on to draw a comparison to his time doing b-boying, explaining that it was always the same feeling whenever he came across a move that grabbed his attention, where he simply had to try it and would end up practicing it relentlessly all through the night until he had it down. Dong-hee also tells her sincerely that he does not think for even a second that any of the time she has put into this has been a waste, because it is something she genuinely loves and cares about deeply. Upon hearing all of that, Genie feels the emotions rise up inside her and her eyes begin to fill with tears as she admits quietly that she does not want to go either and that she just wants to keep going a little while longer. The following day, Genie's mother organizes an event for her company that includes inviting 4 European countries to their city. The head woman tells her that she wouldn't have been able to do if it wasn't for her and tells her to take a break for a while. The madam says that Genie's mother has 2 daughters but she still hasn't been at home for years and she wants her to spend time with her family. Just then, Joseph shows up and says that he thought she would be here because she's a diplomat, but it's great seeing her here. Joseph asks her if it's not hard to bring so many different European countries together when she is in charge of international diplomacy at this festival. Genie's mother says that it is thanks to the excellent staff working day and night. Genie's mother then asks him if her daughter has any problems, but Joseph says she doesn't and tells her that Samyong-hai also applied for this festival and he just had something to say to her. Genie's mother puts 2 and 2 together and assumes that Joseph is suggesting that he wants Genie to join something, and she firmly tells him that her daughter is in the process of transferring schools and that it is simply not possible at this point since she has already gone through and completed the entire school transfer procedure. Genie's mother then goes on to explain her reasoning further, saying that there are certain things that Genie genuinely lacks and that she is simply not very good at handling things independently on her own, and that the world around them is changing and evolving at such a rapid pace that if Genie continues on her current path, she is going to get swallowed up and left behind in an increasingly competitive society without even realizing it. Just at that moment, Fabian comes bounding over and heads straight toward Joseph as if she is about to throw her arms around him, but this time she holds herself back and instead turns and greets Genie's mother. Joseph takes the opportunity to introduce them and tells Fabian that this is Genie's mother, and Genie's mother looks at Fabian curiously and asks Joseph who exactly she is. Joseph explains that she is a Spanish street workout athlete and then turns to Genie's mother and asks whether she would like to see firsthand what kind of exercises and skills Genie has been developing and working on. After she agrees, Joseph proceeds to sit her down and have her watch a whole series of athletes performing various impressive street workout exercises one after another. When Genie's mother catches sight of Fabian performing exercises on the metal rod, she is left completely stunned and unable to look away. Genie's mother tells Fabian that it was absolutely amazing to watch and admits openly that she had no idea that street workout was anything like what she had just witnessed. After that, Joseph steps in and tells her that Genie's skills are actually on almost the exact same level as Fabian's in many areas, and that there is not a single other girl her age anywhere who can perform at the same level that Genie is capable of. Genie's mother takes all of that in but responds by saying that it is still an incredibly difficult and uncertain road ahead for Genie, pointing out that there are countless competitions and obstacles along the way, and that as a parent she cannot help but worry deeply about her daughter choosing to walk such a painful and thorny path. Genie's mother then opens up further and shares that ever since her husband passed away, she has never once seen Genie genuinely and truly smile, and that during that same period she herself was going through such an unbearably hard time that she simply failed to notice the changes that were quietly happening in her children right in front of her. Fabian then gently speaks up and tells Genie's mother that Genie is an incredibly bright and resilient child, sharing that on the day she went to the gym, she had told Genie honestly that audiences tend to grow bored quickly with certain kinds of performances, and that rather than feeling discouraged by those words, Genie had simply smiled warmly and used it as motivation to push herself even further. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, the thug Wusiop turns to Kyungsoo and orders him to track down Dong-hee and Jun as quickly as possible and finish them off for good. The next day, Joseph informs the team that the festival is 2 weeks away, and this is the first time that street workout has been showcased during a domestic festival. Joseph asks Genie what she is doing here when her mother opposed the participation, so she gets nervous. Joseph then reveals that her mother gave him permission, which means Genie is also participating. Hearing that, everyone gets excited except for Soya, who wonders when Dong-hee and Genie got so close. Furthermore, Joseph tells them that the section of the festival performance was set to Kilbong Park in Gangdong-gu. He also says that European pros will be gathering and they are just doing a light show, but he asks Dong-hee what has he practiced so far, and he has to show it to him. After that, Donghee gets ready and Soya starts blushing, thinking he has changed a lot and because of that her knees are getting weak. Donghee kicks things off by launching into a clean and powerful muscle up before flowing directly into a skipping the bar technique that draws the attention of everyone watching. After that, he unleashes his swing 360 move with impressive control and then decides to push himself even further by going at it again, this time pulling off a swing 540, which happens to be the exact same difficult action that Genie herself had been performing. To finish things off, Donghee moves into a handstand, but rather than stopping there he throws in a twist and quickly transitions into a full planche directly on the metal rod, which sends a wave of shock rippling through every single person watching. Soya stands there completely floored and thinks to herself that it has to be some kind of lie that this person only started working out less than 3 months ago. Joseph, however, takes it all in with a growing sense of excitement and thinks to himself that this is absolutely perfect, as what Donghee is pulling off is a straddle planche, which is a specific and highly demanding type of planche balance where the performer spreads their legs outward, and Donghee is making it look remarkably easy. Donghee then sets his sights on attempting yet another trick on the metal rod, but this time things do not go as planned and he ends up missing the rod at the critical moment and comes dropping down onto the mat below. Genie, watching from the sidelines, immediately lights up with excitement and rushes to tell him that he is absolutely amazing and that everything he just showed them was genuinely incredible. Soya then grows curious and asks what Donghee's rate of growth really is and how it is even possible. Joseph thinks it over and concludes that Donghee possesses a combination of flexibility, muscular endurance, and recovery ability that is simply not on the same level as an average person, and that without those qualities there would genuinely be no reasonable explanation for the kind of rapid and dramatic growth he has displayed in such a short period of time. Joseph also reflects that he has never once in his entire life come across a level of physical ability quite like what Donghee demonstrates and comes to the conclusion that Donghee is simply a natural-born genius. Joseph then turns to Donghee and asks him directly what move he was actually attempting to pull off after completing the straddle planche. Soya steps in and explains that it was the Thomas, a physically demanding and body-breaking technique that is traditionally meant to be performed on the floor, but that Donghee is trying to find a way to incorporate it into his iron rod routine instead. She also adds that in dynamic competitions, players are expected to string together multiple movements in quick succession, and that a movement which incorporates elements of breaking dance could potentially become a truly unique and powerful weapon that belongs exclusively to Donghee and sets him apart from everyone else. Just at that moment, Joseph's phone rings and he picks up to find that it is a call from the school, informing him that Jun has been rushed to the hospital following a hit-and-run accident. Genie breaks into a run and heads straight for the hospital, her mind racing with the knowledge that a gangster on a motorcycle had fled the scene after striking Jun with a hard stick. Upon arriving at the hospital, Genie immediately bursts into tears, her imagination running wild with the thought that something truly terrible must have happened to her sister, but then Jun suddenly appears seemingly out of nowhere looking barely scratched at all and asks Genie with a puzzled expression what she is even doing there. As things settle down, it turns out that Jun has tracked down 2 girls from the school who come forward and apologize to Genie for their role in luring her out to that abandoned old factory in the first place. Jun then turns to the girls with a serious and focused expression and asks them whether they have any idea who those bullies actually are, pointing out that the fact that those guys are willing to go to the extreme length of what looks like human trafficking means that there has to be someone much bigger and more dangerous pulling the strings behind the scenes. One of the girls then brings up something she had noticed, mentioning that there is one particular detail about the bullies that stood out to her, which is that she had spotted them all sharing the exact same tattoo on their bodies. Jun leans in and asks the girl whether she can remember what the tattoo actually looked like and describe it in any detail. Just at that tense moment, one of the bully girls from that day suddenly steps forward out of the group, saying that there is something important she needs to say. She says that Sora, her friend, can't be reached, and she thinks they took her to the workshop and make up for the track record, otherwise she's abandoned. She also says that she thinks they took her to the workshop to make up for the track record, otherwise she's abandoned. The girl also says that she doesn't know how early some organization makes kids like them do illegal transactions, and if they work, they pay a lot of money, but if someone fails they will be discarded. She also says that in the past, someone was abandoned for doing something that the organization did not tell. Jun then asks her about Sora, so the girl says they took her instead to make up for the performance and next time maybe her. The girl also opens up and admits that lately she has not been able to sleep properly at night because she is constantly feeling scared, and that is the exact reason she had reached out and come to Jun asking for help in the first place. After hearing her out, Jun makes the decision to follow the girl, who mentions that the place they are heading to is always the same spot they use, pointing out that the last time it was the abandoned factory complex. The girl then turns to Jun and asks her why she always feels the need to get herself involved in other people's problems and make their business her own. Jun responds simply and honestly, explaining that her father was a police officer and that she herself wants to follow in his footsteps and become a cop one day, someone who genuinely helps people when they need it most. While the two of them are in the middle of crossing the road together, a biker suddenly comes speeding directly toward Jun out of nowhere, and in that split second the other girl shoves Jun straight into the path of another guy who is coming at her wielding a metal rod. Back in the present, Jun recounts that when she next opened her eyes, she found herself lying in a hospital bed with no memory of how she got there. Genie asks her whether she has ever found herself caught up among such genuinely dangerous people before, and Jun shakes her head and says that this is the very first time anything like this has ever happened to her in her life. Shortly after, their mother comes rushing through the hospital doors, getting worried about Jun lying there. In a flashback, a young Jun proudly tells her parents that when she grows up she is going to become a police officer just like her dad, but Genie's mother finds that she simply cannot recall what Genie herself had said during that same moment in time. Back in the present, Jun's mother rushes over to her, asking her urgently whether she is hurt anywhere and what the doctors have had to say about whether she is going to be completely alright. Jun tries to reassure her by saying that she is going to be perfectly fine and that it is really nothing more than a minor scratch, but her mother is not the least bit calmed down by that and remains absolutely furious at the gangsters who had carried out the hit and run and fled without a second thought. Just then, Joseph and Soya come through the door together and both of them let out a visible breath of relief upon seeing that Jun had not been seriously hurt in the incident. Genie then turns to Joseph and quietly asks him whether she would be able to step away from her club activities, explaining that she does not think she is in a position to keep going with it anymore. She goes on to say that while she had been so completely consumed by exercising and focusing on herself, she had failed to pay any real attention to her younger sister or the rest of her family, and she genuinely feels that she had been far too selfish during that time. Just at that moment, loud and heated voices begin spilling out from the nearby room, and it quickly becomes clear that Jun is refusing to go along with the idea of changing schools and has launched into a full-blown argument with her mother over the whole matter. Consumed by anger, Jun lashes out and tells her mother that she is doing nothing more than chasing after the shadow of their dead father, and that she has absolutely no idea what it is that they are all expecting from her. Jun then storms out of the room, making her way down to the lobby to get away from everything. Down in the lobby, one of the thugs from before happens to spot her and begins moving in her direction, but before he can get anywhere near her, Dong-hee comes barreling into him and cuts him off completely. Dong-hee then makes his way over to Genie, who tells him with a worried look that she is trying to find her sister who had just walked out of her room moments ago. Meanwhile, Jun has made it outside and is standing alone when the thug suddenly comes up from behind and grabs her roughly by the collar, reminding her coldly that the motorcycle incident was meant to serve as her first warning and that he is now standing in front of her to deliver another one. He leans in close and tells Jun to keep her mouth completely shut and not say a single word to the police about anything she knows, and in that terrifying moment Jun finds herself desperately wishing with everything she has that someone would show up and help her. Right at that moment, as if answering her silent plea, Dong-hee appears and drives a hard and decisive punch straight into the guy's face without any hesitation, and as the thug staggers back Dong-hee immediately realizes that he recognizes this person from a previous encounter. Dong-hee rushes over to check on Jun, but stops dead in his tracks when the shocking realization hits him that she is the exact same girl he had encountered before. Dong-hee explains to her that the guy had looked immediately suspicious to him at first glance, and so he had made the decision to follow him and see where he was heading. Dong-hee then turns his attention back to the guy and tells him plainly that he must have come here because of what went down the last time they crossed paths and asks him directly whether he has turned into some kind of stalker. Dong-hee also gives him one last chance, telling him that he is willing to let the whole thing go and forgive him if he simply turns around and walks away right now. Kyung-soo, however, has no intention of backing down and reaches into his pocket, pulling out a weapon before launching himself at Dong-hee, who pushes every instinct he has to its limit trying to dodge out of the way in time. When the weapon comes crashing down and makes contact with the concrete ground, it actually shatters and breaks apart on impact, which catches Dong-hee genuinely off guard and surprises him even further. Kyung-soo then looks at Dong-hee and tells him coldly that just because they got kicked out that day does not mean that Dong-hee had actually won anything. He also adds that if they had known his leg was the way it is, Dong-hee would have already been dead and buried right there on the spot. Upon hearing those words, Dong-hee gets furious and he launches forward and drives a devastating punch clean across Kyung-soo's face with everything he has. Kyung-soo goes crashing down to the ground, lying there in disbelief and thinking to himself that Dong-hee is even stronger than he had ever given him credit for. He further gets confused and wonders what kind of strength he actually holds. Dong-hee tells the guy to get up as they are not done yet, but Kyung-soo thinks that if he has to go back like this, he will be killed by Wooseop anyways. Suddenly, another guy comes charging at Dong-hee from the side in an attempt to catch him off guard, but Dong-hee manages to dodge out of the way at the very last possible second. Dong-hee then throws himself into taking on both of them entirely on his own, landing incredibly heavy and punishing blows on each of them as he moves between the two. One of the guys picks up on something during the fight and points out to the other that the reason Dong-hee keeps grabbing and pulling his opponents in close before hitting them is because he is struggling to maintain his balance on his legs, and so they decide that their best strategy from that point on is to keep as much distance between themselves and Dong-hee as they possibly can and attack from range. Dong-hee, however, is painfully aware of the problem himself and thinks with frustration that his legs are simply not cooperating with him the way he needs them to, and that the inflammation has been steadily getting worse at what is possibly the worst time it could have chosen to flare up. Kyung-soo then seizes his opportunity and manages to land a hard and decisive blow on Dong-hee with the metal rod, sending him crashing down onto the ground from the force of the impact. Kyung-soo then shifts his attention away from Dong-hee and begins advancing toward Jun, who wastes no time and rises up into a fighting stance to face him head-on, which draws a mocking laugh out of Kyung-soo. He then comes at Jun with the metal rod raised and ready to strike, and just as he brings it swinging down toward her, Genie suddenly appears and steps directly in front of her sister to shield her from the blow. Before the rod could reach Genie, Jun shoves her out of the way just in time. Kyung-soo tries to raise his arm for another strike, but the beating Dong-hee gave him earlier has left him barely able to move. The two sisters take their chance and run inside a nearby building. Jun notices blood trickling down Genie's forehead and realizes she must have been caught by the earlier attack. Before she can say anything, Kyung-soo comes walking through the door, telling the girls to stop wasting his time and come out. He moves through the darkness without hesitation, and when he finally corners them behind the wall he smirks, telling them that after taking out so many kids with a baseball bat he has gotten pretty good at sniffing out blood. Jun's mind races trying to figure out how they are supposed to deal with someone like this. Then out of nowhere, a baseball bat connects hard with the back of Kyung-soo's head, and the girl from before is standing right behind him holding it. Kyung-soo grabs the girl and slams her head straight into the wall without a second thought, making it clear that he has absolutely no limits. Then Genie steps out from behind Jun and plants herself directly in front of Kyung-soo, telling him to keep his hands off her sister. Jun watches in disbelief, suddenly realizing that even though Genie was terrified the whole time, she never once stopped trying to protect her. Before Kyung-soo can raise his hand, Dong-hee's fist crashes into his face out of nowhere. Dong-hee turns to Genie and tells her to get back, because if she gets hurt now her dream of becoming a real athlete is finished. Kyung-soo shakes it off and charges forward, convinced that punch was weak and that Dong-hee's legs are the problem. What he does not expect is Dong-hee grabbing a pole with one hand and unloading a rapid flurry of jabs with the other, each one landing clean and hard. Kyung-soo eats every single hit but keeps pushing forward, completely fixated on taking Dong-hee down no matter what it costs him. Then Dong-hee's foot connects with full force, and Kyung-soo finally goes down. Suddenly, the sound of police sirens cut through the air and the girl from before steps forward and reveals that she is the one who made the call. Joseph, still inside the hospital, notices the commotion and stops one of the nurses to ask why there are police present, and the nurse explains that there has been an assault reported in the hospital parking lot where a guy had been attempting to attack a female student. When Joseph and Genie's mother make their way out to the scene, Genie's mother is hit with an immediate wave of shock upon seeing both of her daughters sitting on the ground. She desperately tries to push her way through to get to them, but the police hold her back and tell her that there is an ongoing investigation taking place and she cannot go in yet. Despite being held back, Genie's mother finds a way to break through anyway and runs straight toward her daughters, and when she reaches them she finds that the two of them are actually genuinely happy and relieved to simply have each other right there beside them. In that raw and overwhelming moment, she finds her thoughts drifting inward as she reflects on how she had never truly listened to Genie all this time, and how she had never actually sat down and made the effort to hear either of her daughters out or take their concerns and feelings seriously. Jun then turns on Genie with barely contained anger and scolds her for jumping in front of her when that unstable and dangerous person was swinging at her. She demands to know what on earth Genie could have possibly been thinking by doing something like that, and Genie responds simply by saying that she did it because her sister was in danger and she could not just stand there. Jun's anger only grows as she asks Genie whether she has any idea whatsoever what could have happened to her if that blow had connected and hit her directly. Genie then gets mad at Jun for fighting with their mother in the hospital room as she already told her not to act emotionally. Genie then speaks from the heart and tells her sister that she truly loves their mother deeply, recognizing that she works incredibly hard for both of them every single day, and while she does find it genuinely difficult at times to come to terms with the hand that fate has dealt their family, she turns to exercise as a way of releasing all of that built-up stress and emotion. Jun then opens up in return and tells Genie that she had always wanted to follow in their father's footsteps and become a police officer just like him, and that more than anything she had wanted to be someone who could step in and help others who were in trouble, exactly the way their father always had. She also shares that she had convinced herself that if she could somehow become like their dad, then their mother would not have to miss him quite so much anymore, and that way of thinking was what had pushed her to start standing up for and helping the bullied kids at school in the first place. Shortly after that heartfelt exchange, Dong-hee suddenly collapses and falls unconscious right there on the ground, and the next thing he knows he is waking up lying in a hospital bed. Joseph and the rest of the group standing around him are visibly frustrated and annoyed when they learn that he had passed out because the inflammation in the area around his prosthetic leg had gotten significantly worse from all the strain he had been putting on it. Joseph shakes his head and tells that given the fact that he has been pushing himself through practice day and night without proper rest, something like this was absolutely bound to happen sooner or later. Shortly after, Jun makes her way into the room with something clearly on her mind, working up the nerve to ask Dong-hee whether he has a girlfriend, but when the moment comes she finds that she simply cannot bring herself to actually say. Will Genie be able to stand up to her mother and fight for the passion that's finally brought her back to life? Comment Street Workout if you'd like a part 2 of this series. Make sure to like and subscribe the channel for more sports manhwa recap.